Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Divisional Round Playoff Extravaganza. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, that's a mighty fine shirt you have there.
You like that? I had to get it to commemorate.
Death of a Patriot. For anyone listening, it has each of the 7 touchdown scoring drives from the game against the Patriots to commemorate that NFL, not only postseason, but regular season record.
The Bills' birthday
touchdown on the first 7.
Yeah,
Happy birthday,
the Bills' birthday gift.
And
you can get it at Store 716. I think they just announced today they're going to do another run. So if you want to get your hands on it, I think it's a limited time deal. So go out and get it. But yeah, no, I was super excited when I saw it. I'm a sucker for any of those ads or anything that comes up Bills, dude. It was like a late night sitting on my phone on Twitter, arguing with somebody and just like,
ads, I do want that.
Yeah, I do need that. You're right. But you know what I needed was this show. Helped me get through the anxiety of last week building up. Not as much anxiety in the same ways, and we'll probably talk through that a little bit tonight, but definitely a bunch of anxiety carrying over from last year about this game. So this is going to be a long 48 hours till we get to kickoff. So I'm glad we're doing this show. And my superstition, once the Bills won, that immediately my thought was like, Greg, we have to do this show again this week because it was part of the superstition that allowed us to win last week, right?
You can't mess with the good thing. You can't mess with the good thing. We had a good run with it. It was a lot of fun. And the reason it was fun is because we had smart people on talking about it with us. And tonight we have our man, Kent Swanson, joining us.
Love this.
Ken, welcome, brother. How are we doing? Well, we'll pretend for now. Huh? It's the polite thing. It's the polite thing to do. But let the people know. I know that we talk pre-show, but KC Sports Network, let them know what it is. It's kind of like the Cover One of Kansas City.
Yeah, hey, can I brag on y'all for a second without being too weird? Because I love y'all. I love what Cover One does. I have so much respect for all y'all. And honestly, we're kind of doing the same thing similar in Kansas City. So KC Sports Network's a lot like the Cover One in Buffalo, so for KC. So we're covering the Chiefs, and we've got a really fun group of people. We got a former Chiefs reporter that kind of built this thing and brought us along, and we've got former players like Jeff Allen and Mike DeVito, some recent players. Mike DeVito spent a lot of time in the AFC East. So yeah,
Absolutely.
we got a lot of cool content out there covering the Chiefs. I will say this, Aaron, the last time you want to talk about superstition, the last time you brought me on for a Chiefs-Bills playoff game, the Chiefs won.
That's true.
Well, so we had Joe Valerio on our preview show.
Yeah, you were on our preview show. This is a totally different show.
When we had Joe on earlier in the year, the Bills won. So hopefully they cancel
offsetting.
We'll see how it goes.
And for anyone that doesn't know, though, you did a show the same night we did, Wednesday night. I am a big fan of going and checking out the enemy, Know Thy Enemy, and checking out the work. So if you could tell people where to find that once they're done here tonight, because Bills fans got 48 hours, man. They're consuming everything they can get their hands on.
Burn.
Yeah, go to KC Sports Network on YouTube. You can watch our game preview edition. We break it down with a lot of we do a lot of film analysis, similar the same kind of vein that you guys operate in a lot over there at Cover One. And so we had some extra film watching done this week. One of our guys watched literally an entire day of it. He was just consuming everything. So it was great.
One of the clips I saw, let's jump right in here. One of the clips I saw kind of kept me up a little bit later than I wanted to last night of the work. Brian Pringle in the red zone, putting a double move on somebody and just getting wide open. This is something a high level that scares me. The Bills have done a good job of masking not having Trey White over the last 6 weeks or whatever it's been since week 12.
Yeah,
I have a lot of faith in Levi Wallace and Dane Jackson. I think they're good corners. I think their biggest weakness is going up against elite speed, and it pops all over your guys' offense. And then even adding in McKinnon, there's speed everywhere here. And seeing that double move and seeing how they were trying to guard Pringle, and me thinking, oh my God, that could be Levi Wallace out there, or Dane Jackson just taking that double move. And you can't give Patrick Mahomes a 2-yard buffer, let alone a 5-10-yard buffer. He's going to hit it every time. So talk to us about some of those matchups real quick, because I think you're not going to talk me off the ledge. I think it's only going to make this anxiety worse for me. But on the enemy side, what are you seeing of these Buffalo Bills corners, this secondary, of how you guys can expose them?
I mean, you're talking about all this stuff, but like, here's the thing, teams have, done a really good job of keeping a lid on this offense for the most part. And so, yeah, like you saw the red zone double move and, the sluggo, and that was great and all, but I mean, these are not plays that the Chiefs have hit a ton this year. Yeah. And so, teams have done a fantastic job forcing long drives. And when things are going wrong for the Chiefs, they're turning the ball over a lot. They are putting the ball on the ground, a lot of plus territory turnovers. So there's been a lot of teams that have had success keeping a lid on this thing, playing, top down and the Chiefs making some mistakes. So I'll be honest with you, obviously we know the kind of vertical threat that this team is capable of doing, and they're going to need to try to hit some of these here sooner rather than later if they're going to continue their season. But this has not been something that has been as prominent for this football team. Good to see it during A+ game script kind of situations, right? With Byron Pringle last week. But I mean, hopefully they've got more. If you're a Chiefs fan, you're hoping to see more vertical shots, double moves, some of those kind of stuff to try to take the lid off of these things.
Well, that's where my concern comes in, is that, honestly, most Bills fans are going to go to where the fantasy football names go. I'm actually not as concerned with the strategy on how do you stop, you're not going to eliminate Kelsey and Hill, but I can live with 7 for 76. I can live with, 4 catches for 85 yards for Hill. It's, hey, if we take that much attention to keep them from going 12 for 150 and 2 touchdowns, does that leave one of our guys who's a good technician, good footwork, keeps himself in position, but now all of a sudden it's a foot race with Mecole Hardman, and I don't like a foot race with Mecole Hardman for Dane Jackson or Levi Wallace. That I agree with Aaron, that I get concerned about. Can you do both? I think we can stop Kelsey or Hill from destroying us, but it's going to leave some islands elsewhere, and that's an awful. Micah Hyde pulled a rabbit out of a hat in the last game, saving Levi Wallace.
Was nuts.
But you can't live on that. You can't assume that, hey, he's going to erase.
I think they'll defend. They're not going to leave single high coverage all that often.
It's easier to go single high against Mac Jones. It's easier to go single high against Mac Jones
to put the ball deep. Yeah.
They played a decent amount of cover one last time that these two teams matched up. Sure. Honestly, though, like I think the thing is, man, I don't think the weapons that the Chiefs have outside of Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill have been particularly consistent. So, like, if the strategy is like, we're going to make Byron Pringle and Mecole Hardman beat us, I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. It's a volatile maybe strategy because those guys do have some capabilities, and the Chiefs have done a pretty good job getting them involved a little bit differently last couple weeks. But at the same time, like the Chiefs, the gap between Tyreek Hill and Byron Pringle is pretty big, in my opinion. And I think the Chiefs outside of Tyreek Hill have one of the worst receiving cores in the NFL. So it's kind of, an interesting, question to ask because, man, I don't think if you ask Chiefs fans, I don't think the confidence level in one, like if you were going to bank on Byron Pringle having a game, I don't think anybody would do it.
Yeah, it's not, and for me, it's not even so much like having a game. I'm a big believer in toxic differential and explosive plays. And I think in a game like this, a handful of explosive plays are going to make the difference. Flipping field is going to make the difference. And I think the Bills, for the most part, do a good job of keeping those things in front of them. They've been able to limit explosive plays in the passing game, keep all that in front of them. And the Chiefs, actually, vice versa, as they've gotten better here, have done a much better job in the second half of the season of taking that, right? Like playing that horizontal game, taking what's in front of them, moving their way down the field in that way. But every once in a while, that speed is what scares me, is you get a little comfortable playing that game and playing the horizontal game, and then boom, somebody takes off and you're giving up an explosive play. So that's really where it scares me. But to that horizontal game, do you think Andy Reid is going to have the type of strategy and discipline to try to use that short passing game and, hope to break one, but willing to stick to it over and over again to keep Josh Allen and this Bills offense off the field?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure if they're going to play a game trying to keep the ball out of Josh Allen's hands necessarily. I think they're just going to try to run a good offense and put points on the board. Yeah. Because I think they probably look at their matchup and they say, like, if our offense plays to its capabilities, they can hang with anybody, they can go toe to toe with anybody, and they can put enough points on the board to win. That, I think the Chiefs feel like pretty good about their defense too. So I don't know if they're going to play a ball control game, but I definitely think there will be an emphasis on, taking what the defense gives them. And like, I think that's going to fall more on Mahomes, like I think Mahomes has got to be more disciplined at times and just kind of take what the defense is giving you. But, he's done a really good job. I think, he had a really nice stretch against the Steelers that, he was taking what was there. He was, pushing the ball a little bit down the field, winning out of structure, a lot of really good signs that you'd like to see. His trainer, Bobby Stroop, said, Patrick left in the first quarter and you're getting Levon Mahomes now. It's
I heard
middle
that.
name.
I saw that.
So I mean, he went nuts. So I don't know if it's
5 touchdowns in 10 minutes on the clock.
It was a fun little 11 minutes, but like
I
think Chiefs fans were just so pissed to be playing in the divisional, like, because I'm sure in the wild card round, I'm sure you guys were too.
Yeah.
Last year we were super pissed to be playing the Colts and having to like be on the ropes against them.
Yeah,
in
the
that
first
game.
year there's not 2 buys and the Bills get the 2 seed. The first year that there's not a second buy.
Yeah,
but
I hate it.
Where you're going, I think that there's so many similarities in what's going to decide this from the quarterback. It's that, hey, both teams who can get pressure with 4, who can get pressure without needing to send extra, who can force the other team to go 10, 12, 14 play drives. And that, hey, we know we're not going to stop you all day, but can you do that 5 times?
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be that kind of setup to say who is going to push and try to, push the envelope, tempt fate just that one time. And then is it Tyrann Mathieu that makes him pay, or is it Micah Hyde that makes him pay? And having that's the cat and mouse game, because we know this isn't going to be some 13-10, game that somebody's going to get one to break. Somebody's going to have a couple of those 12 and 14 play scoring drives. It's who gets the red zone turnover, who gets the, hey, we know field goals aren't enough, so we're going to go out on 4th down, and you get the stop and you get the turnover on downs. All it's going to take is 1 or 2 of those, and that the other team gets the ball and goes down and scores like both teams are going to. And all of a sudden the other team's chasing down 14, catch up by 7, down 14 again, catch up by 7, down 14 again, catch up by 7. It's going to be that kind of thing. And I'm really curious who's going to push that envelope first.
I think that's a big piece of this. And like, you talk about explosive plays. Like, I think that could be a nice little factor here for sure. Turnovers, though, I think is the big one, though. And like, as much as you want to see the explosive plays, for me, when I'm looking at this game, it's who's going to make those back-breaking turnovers, who's going to make more of those kind of mistakes, because I do think both of these teams are going to give up some yards. I think they're going to play pretty soft between the 20s. They're going to tighten up and hope to force field goals in the red zone or force turnovers. I think that's really going to be a pretty similar concept for both of these teams. So that's really what I'm looking at. And can one of these teams get out enough to put a little pressure on the other one? That's going to be where it's going to be fun to kind of see, how these quarterbacks specifically respond to that kind of pressure.
One of the questions that we wanted to ask, we know it's different from the Bills fans' aspiration of what they hope this matchup can be versus, Casey's already gotten to where we want to get to, and now they're kind of fending off and fighting off everybody. You've had to play Herbert twice a year and see some of his development. You had the good game with Burrow already. I think if this game goes the right way and is one of the fun, maybe historic shootouts that we think it could be, do you think that Chiefs fans will see this as maybe the Brady Manning of the future for the next decade, that, hey, one of these teams is representing the AFC in the Super Bowl?
Well, I think one of these teams is representing the AFC in the Super Bowl for a long time. Yeah. I think we talked a little bit about this earlier in the week, Greg. Like, I think this game really starts helping define the relationship, though, because if the Chiefs can delay the Bills, if they can hold the Bills off for one more year, in this whole thing, the doubt, the anxiety continues for another offseason. It creeps into the back of your guys' head, all that kind of stuff.
Well, quick, Aaron, give him the analogy you and Pat had, the one that I love and the one that I really, really hate.
Yeah, mine is that you guys are the Pistons to MJ's Bulls, and that's the hump to get over. And it took a couple years, right? Like, that took multiple playoff trips for MJ to get over those bad boy Pistons. My friend Pat Moran said it was more possibly like the Knicks,
that it could be,
that it concerned that actually the Chiefs are the Bulls and that the Bills might be the Knicks and never get over that hump, right? So like, really, we are in that sort of fine line here. In the next 2 years, we'll find out which way that's
the stretch or the kind of game that defines which end of that
right.
That
it doesn't
rivalry
have to be this year, but it's gonna be in the next couple of years here.
I totally get that. And like the problem is Kansas City thinks they have Michael Jordan,
Right.
you know? And so like
for good reason.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, but, like,
ridiculous.
I can't prove that wrong.
Yeah, but like, I mean, but like, I think the thing is, so like, there's some crossover in some of the analogy there, and like, I actually called him Michael Jordan. I said he was our Michael Jordan on our show this week because, like, you know, and I think we talked a little bit about this, Greg, too. Is like this kind of ties into the relationship between these two teams moving forward and how everybody feels and all that stuff, because it does feel like there's a lot of momentum and energy towards the Bills finally, you know, pushing through and breaking through. Right. And you saw how they exercised the demons last week. The weird thing for us is and I think we can all agree here, our quarterbacks have normalized great things for us that none of us ever could have imagined as fans of our football teams. And so we are living an experience that I don't think anybody anticipated. None of us expected when our teams drafted them. We all hoped.
Yeah,
we all
none
hoped,
of us have any history of how to feel this way.
No. I mean, so Mahomes has normalized things for us, and he's made us numb to the process. He's made us numb to the kind of success that they've had the last 3 years. And I don't think he's done surprising us. And right now it kind of feels like the Bills are knocking on the door, but it also feels like this could be one of those moments where Mahomes kind of reminds Kansas City even a little bit of what they're in. And I think that's what's going to be so fascinating for me from that storyline perspective. It's, we haven't taken Mahomes for granted. Don't get me wrong. I just think things have been so, like, we've just kind of been numbed by how great he is on some things that, like, sometimes you need a moment to pop up and surprise you. And I think both fan bases right now are hoping for something to pop up and surprise them. Either you guys breaking through and getting over Mahomes in the playoffs, or Mahomes just stomping the rest of the competition down a peg, and trying to keep them from climbing up and becoming that toe-to-toe contender every single year where you don't know which one's actually going to wind up in the Super Bowl.
Well, it's funny that, one last comment on this. It's really interesting. It's the first time in Mahomes' career that someone else has been the talking point or the hot new thing. It's always been, well, he's the centerpiece of the future of the NFL, and no one's like, I was on a radio show earlier in KC earlier, I think from your recommendation, so I appreciate that. I was saying that, hey, no sane Bills fan is saying that Allen's gonna slingshot or get past or be better. There are people that are wondering, hey, could he fight his way up onto that tier and make it a discussion where it's not crazy to say, hey, if I was starting a franchise tomorrow, hey, I can be not a crazy person to say, I think I'd take Josh Allen. He's not there. He would need doesn't have to be like last week, but a great game beating Mahomes in Mahomes' house, and to make that even a discussion. And that topic hasn't existed. It's been just, hey, Mahomes is the guy every single person would pick if you're starting a franchise. And if you even bring anybody else up, you're crazy. And then there's another tier with the other guys. And I'm interested to see, do we see that thing of like, oh yeah, he heard everybody talking about how somebody else was as good as him and on his level. And I'm curious to see because that's the kind of thing Josh would do. That's the kind of thing, everybody says, I don't listen to the media. Well, of course they do. Of course they hear what's going on.
Yeah. I don't think if it's necessarily just a Josh Allen thing either. It's just, I do think that there is, I think it's already happening. I think you saw Chris Sims say, the last two years of tape of Josh Allen's better than Mahomes. And you've seen some of the QB rankings that some people are putting out in some of the clutch, and there's just all kinds of stuff that people have really, I think, and not to try to be too arrogant about Patrick Mahomes, but I do think people have gotten a little bored with him at times too. Yeah. And so some of the narratives and the conversations that people are having around this, compounded with the fact that the Chiefs they had a horrific stretch of football, and you guys got to see it.
It was a rough start.
You guys beat the brakes off them early in the year. And so they had this stretch that kind of humanized them a little bit differently. And, I think we're all in Kansas City just trying to wait to figure out if this team just doesn't have it, if this team is just exhausted from being in the last two Super Bowls, if they're burnt out, or if there's a kind of quiet confidence that they've been building to this moment and they're about to unleash, because in their minds and how they feel that the season kind of more or less starts, this week. So that's what's I'm just curious to find out what this team is like the DNA of this football team for this particular season. And I think the QB narrative is kind of exactly tied to that a little bit too.
Yeah, and while that's the main story here, and will be going in through the weekend, for me, I just rewatched today Brandon Beane's post-season press conference at the end of the year after that KC loss, like a day or 2, 3 days after that. He had his wrap-up press conference, and a lot of what he said, he's a very honest GM, and a lot of what he said was basically specifically, we got to get over this hump. And here's how we do it, laying out, hey, the defensive line, like we need to be able to get at Mahomes. That was ridiculous. He just stood there all day and all the time in the world. You can't allow him to do that. And then he specifically called out Dawson Knox in the tight end position. And it's why everyone here in Buffalo was on the Zach Ertz trade train, and we got to draft the top tight end. And really, I hadn't heard him call players out like that and really get to specific units of like, this is the thing that's holding us back from beating a team like this. Now we're here. We're at that game that they spend a ton of assets along the defensive line. They're 2 top draft picks and have a heavy rotation along that defensive line. And they've put that rotation in place specifically so that it was fresh when you get to play Mahomes late in the playoffs. And then Dawson Knox has emerged. He really has answered that call from Brandon Beane. And he now is a tight end that you have to game plan for. And that was the specific comment, was we don't have a tight end that a team like that has to game plan for. It doesn't open things up. So along the lines of those 2 ideas that were really targeted on that KC game, watching this Bills team on film, do you think that they've done enough to address those areas to make it a concern for the Kansas City Chiefs going into this weekend?
I love Dawson Knox.
I do too.
A lot. Dude, he's a problem. And I think it's not just in structure, but out of structure. I think the one thing I really like about the Bills, and it feels like a lot of the kind of, I don't want to call them secondary players, but some of your weapons that aren't necessarily getting the same kind of targets as Stephon Diggs, those guys are doing such a great job out of structure with Josh Allen. So like Gabriel Davis and Dawson Knox, I feel like are 2 guys that have some ability to kind of win out of structure with him. Dawson Knox is an absolute problem, and you've seen him get some of the volume of touchdowns that he's had, and he's got him in bunches at times. And I mean, he's an absolute problem. The defensive line's the interesting one. I think they got the right dudes. I think some dudes need to develop a little bit more, because then it's, I mean, not to say that, that these guys aren't like, I'm not saying that, AJ Epinesa, Carlos Basham, those guys, I don't think that they're bad players. I just think as they develop,
right,
it's going to be a core piece of this group, and they've spent a lot of assets there. And as that group continue to develops, like they'll grow into that pass rush being a problem. I don't think it's a world beating group yet, but you have the bodies, you have the right bodies, and you absolutely have the depth to bring it. And Greg Rousseau too. Like, that's a good group, and I'm looking forward to, seeing them develop, because I liked all those guys coming out.
And speaking of
the late breakout for guys like Harrison Phillips or Dawson Knox are hopefully the story you tell.
Yeah, right. And so sort of a bigger picture, we've talked about, hey, these 2 teams are going to be facing each other into the future here. And I think that this is probably the future of the AFC. You talked about specifically your guys' receiving core being one of the worst in the NFL, in your opinion, outside of your top targets. This team has also invested a lot in the now, right? Like it's built to win right now. And I'm a big believer as long as you have the quarterback, you're in a Super Bowl window. But things are going to get a little bit weird here for Kansas City in the next few years, of some of those veteran guys moving their way out. And what do you guys have in terms of young depth? Like, do you feel like this is really a team that can still hang in that top part of the AFC for the next 3 to 4 years with what you've got? Or is it going to be continue to just stock every single year and hope that people come to you because it's a chance to win a Super Bowl?
Oh, I mean, I don't think the Chiefs have done a good enough job developing young talent to, keep the shelves stocked the same way like you guys have. I mean, I think you guys have done a better job building depth and young talent along your roster. Chiefs have kind of done it a little bit differently. I will say this last draft helped a lot. Yeah. So they nailed it. We
don't talk about Creed Humphrey on this show, by the way.
Yeah,
we're not gonna talk about
that. Trey Smith. I mean, I'm not. I like. I'm not a big Nick Bolton fan as like a, a coverage backer necessarily, but like he's very good at what he does.
Right, sure.
Like they did some good things. They had a very good draft and they really needed it. But I also think, some of the issues that you're seeing on this football right now are paying for the sins of some prior drafts. McCole Hardman's been a big disappointment, and he's not a guy that really has developed into anything more than a touchdown, check down type player where you're having to get him involved with a lot of gadget plays or try to get him down the field on a vertical shot because the route tree in between those things is just there's nothing substantial to it. So I think the Chiefs haven't done a great job necessarily of stocking the shelves with recent drafts, except for this last one. So like, this is the right start. They need to nail they've just created they've created a very little margin for error for how they're building this team moving forward. They got to nail this next draft, but they're always going to have veterans. I mean, they're always going to be a team that's going to try to go take blue chip players. They're kind of Ramsey, they're kind of Ramsish in that.
That's
like
good. Yeah.
And
Rams are proving Greg's a big cap guy. Greg's a big cap guy, but they keep
the Rams and the Saints just keep defying the laws of physics.
Yeah, they really do.
Yeah,
when they're going to pay for their sins, but
I don't know.
It's going to be bad when they do.
The Bill's going to come due eventually, but I don't know. The Chiefs aren't quite as crazy as those two teams, but you see what Brett Veach is willing to do with his draft capital. And he's, he's made one first round pick in his career as a GM, and it was Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which,
maybe he shouldn't bother. No.
Maybe he should avoid doing those. But right? I mean, you look at that, and you talk about there's a lot of people because of the slightly later breakout. Like Travis Kelce's a sneaky 32, and he's still obviously
he feels old
at a high level. But for the first time this year, the games where people are super physical with him the whole game in the fourth quarter, he's looked 32 for the first time. Like before, he was just not the same style as Gronk, but just that invincible monster in the middle. Like, what the heck do you do with this freak of an athlete? And he started to look there where, I've seen some flashes from Noah Gray. Do you think he's a legitimate future piece?
Nah.
No. Okay.
It's too early to tell. Okay. And it's tough to kind of, Travis Kelce.
It's an unfair bar.
Well, Travis Kelce's a sneaky 250. I mean, he's a bigger, he's a Y body that Y isos, he's a different cat. Frame. And Noah Gray, I think there's some chance for him to develop. He's very limited as a blocker, and he's even more limited than Kelce as a blocker. And he's smaller than Kelce too. I mean, I think he's only checking in at 235-ish, somewhere along that. I think he's a guy that can Y ISO a little bit and run a little bit more complex route tree than like a true Y inline guy. But I don't think he's necessarily a guy that's going to be a capable replacement. Kelce is, this has been a hard year for Kelce. It's been a really hard year for Kelce health wise. I'm not sure it's not worse than maybe it is public.
Right.
So he's been through some stuff there, and teams have been playing more physical, and there's been really rough stretches for him for sure.
Sort of on that, you mentioned it before, and I don't know that we as fans always realize how big of a toll it is of teams that make multiple deep playoff runs and how significant that can be and how that compounds. Do you think that that's going to start coming to fruition here? Like you said, maybe in this game or maybe even in this playoffs of multiple years making deep runs and getting those 4 extra games a year. And now you added on an extra game to this season anyway. That's got to take its toll on some of these players that, we talk about players' age versus their real age, how much time they've put in. This run for Kansas City has aged a lot of these players more than probably would have. Yeah,
2 straight Super Bowl. That's what 11 extra games.
Yeah. I think we're about to find out. I think Sunday is when we find that out. Honestly, because this team they've played all but one game that they're basically physically capable of as the 1 or 2 seed the last 2 years. So they've literally played dang near the max number of games. So. Yeah. We're about to find out how impactful that is, and if this team's running on fumes and they're not able to kind of sustain, or if this is just they're so bored with the process that they had that early rough stretch. I don't know. It's going to be fascinating. I'm so curious. It feels like, and I'm just being candid, kind of feels a little too quiet out there in Kansas City right now.
It does feel
and
quiet.
So I'm not entirely sure that's a good thing for this narrative. If it's they're running on fumes, I think there might have they might be a little bit
just got to turn it on. Yeah,
I'm not gonna say that entirely because I think that's a little disrespectful to the process. But I just think the process means something differently to them than it has in the past because they've been through this so much.
They know they didn't need to show that much. So with that in mind, what are you expecting to see on Sunday? Give us a score prediction.
Oh, well, I think we're going to see a really, really special football game. And I think we're going to see one of the best football games of the year. I think it has a chance to be a really good one. These are two great teams. I'm never going to bet against Patrick Mahomes. I'm just never going to do it.
It hasn't worked out well for people since.
You know, and I'm going to go 38-31. I think it's going to be an up and down game. I think it's going to be a late score, a very late score for Mahomes driving down. But I think we're in for a good one. And I just hope the Chiefs can hope they can keep you guys down. Just stay down for like a few more years.
We got to do a immediate post game show after that. It's a late score to win the game. 30-31 sounds terrible to come on.
Not going to be well,
dude. I think the adrenaline for me is going to kick in pretty hard this week, and it really hasn't at all. Yeah. I think it's going to be a lot this week, and look, we were all like Chiefs fans have all been exactly where you guys were 2 years ago. Yeah. And I know that feeling and that anxiety. And if it's not us, I hope it's y'all. I genuinely mean that.
Means a lot, man. Yeah. So again, make sure you guys are checking out KC Sports Network. Amazing job. And honestly, after you check this out, go look at their preview shows. If you want to hear, some objective, intelligent discussion on what this game is going to be like from the other perspective, can't recommend anybody higher. You guys do awesome work. Really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll have you on again for years to come. This is going to be the matchup we got to get used to.
I hate that we have to be bitter rivals for the next decade.
It's just so much of our hatred is focused on the New England region that we can just be friendly rivals.
And it won't be bitter after we win this week, and then it will just be even rivals.
Okay, I see how it is. Okay.
All right, brother. Hey, hope for an awesome game. Really excited about it. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
All right, man. Good to see you guys.
Take it.
All right, jumping right in from guest to guest, bringing on our boys from the Hoop, Anthony, Romeo, Eric Brown. How we doing, gentlemen?
What's going on, fellas? Getting ready, counting down the clock already to game time.
Kent got me all
I gotta say,
I got agita.
I gotta say, Anthony, I appreciate you coming on. He messaged me earlier today, not feeling good, under the weather.
Not feeling good.
I was like, hey man, if you we'll figure it out. And he's like, nah, man, I got this.
Gotta have something to look forward to. We had such a blast last week, obviously, on the preview show. And
that's right.
I nailed it, right? So
yes,
had to come back.
That's why I needed you back on.
Yeah. Sounds like you partied a little too hard this week.
Well, it's rare
I wish
that your prediction wasn't even strong enough. It was even more of a
I said that on our show. I said 38-10 was a modest prediction. So that was correct.
That's spot on. So let's start out. I know you guys, your show on Tuesday was great. How now flipping from one where, we gave you your props, Anthony. I think that it was rightful to be really confident in that Patriots game. I feel good about this game, but it's different. It's not the same level of confidence because now certainly. We're going up against another monster. Mm-hmm. How are you feeling coming into this week? We'll start with you, Anthony. How is it feeling as you've done the research? You've looked at what we're going into. You're seeing this other, juggernaut of a team. What are you feeling coming into this game?
My big thing with the Patriots game was just watch the football and you'll get the answers, right? The Bills were better in every way, shape, and form. The first time we played them, the second time we played them, all year long. They were not a contending team. They should not have been in the playoffs. Now you look at this Kansas City team, and it's the complete opposite scenario here. But when you go through it, position by position, defense versus defense, offense versus offense, they might have a little edge on us on offense. I think we have the edge on them on defense. I honestly think the Bills still have the edge in this game, no matter what way you break it down. So to me, that makes me optimistic. Certainly not as confident as I was against the Patriots, knowing that they were the inferior team. this team knows how to contend. This team has been here before. They know how to win. Kansas City is a team we have to beat to get over that hump. And I think this team knows it. One of the things I said on the hoof that I'll say again now is, remember, the game that the Bills showed up the most for this entire season was that Kansas City game in the beginning of the year. They came to play because they wanted revenge. I hope they have that bitter taste in their mouth once again for this playoff game, because they're going to need it to, give it their all. There's no leeway in this game. You have to give it your all to contend and to beat a team like Kansas City.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think Josh Reed has talked about this in a lot of the press conferences, bringing it up that Josh Allen's best games this year have been against all these playoff teams, against all the better teams in the league. The games that they lost were to mostly inferior opponents, except for Indy, who that was a weird how their season went anyway. Eric, I'm going to sort of push the same question to you about kind of how you're feeling, but from a fan perspective, last weekend we all got on here and it was the crazy ramp up of anxiety because it was the Patriots, right? And there was 20 years of AFC East beatdowns and division rival BS that we had to deal with. And if we won, fantastic. It was going to be a celebration. If we lost, it was going to be the most miserable weekend in the history of being a fan. And I think that anxiety just held over us like a cloud. And this week, surprisingly, even though it's the divisional round, it's the AFC championship rematch. This is the game that I've wanted all along since we saw Stephon Diggs watching the confetti fall down. This week's gone a lot faster for me. The anxiety is not there in the same way. Am I crazy, or are you feeling that too?
Well, I was saying last week that if we lost to the Patriots, I'd be depressed for a year.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's all of us. But losing to Pat Mahomes is kind of we're getting used to that, right? From last year. So I wouldn't feel as bad if you get outplayed by Pat Mahomes. So that the risk factor is not there. It's like you're saying.
Is the anxiety there, though, knowing that this is a team that knocked you out of the play? I thought the last year was a Bills Super Bowl run. I thought that team was a team of destiny. That was going to be a out of nowhere Super Bowl run. And all of a sudden you run into that Patrick Mahomes wall, and now you're running back into that wall again. And I haven't felt throughout the year, I thought this team was going to be good, but as the season went on, I was like, no, maybe this isn't the Super Bowl. I mean, like if they get there, they have a shot, but it doesn't feel like a team of destiny. Now you're running into that wall again. But for me, there's just not a ton of anxiety into this game. It's like, hey, it's a coin flip. We'll see how it goes.
Right. Yeah, I'm not feeling the anxiety either, but there's going to be some disappointment if they lose, right? Both coordinators look like they're on their way out. This is kind of the last chance with this team. I think next year the team will be different, right? And I think the players are aware of that. Like, they want to play for Daboll. I think he's been good to them, right? They want to play for Leslie Frazier. He's been great. I've never heard one bad thing about both those coordinators in the time they've been here. So that says a lot. But I think we got to start thinking about what's Josh Allen's legacy. When do we start having those conversations?
I think it builds in that it's not, for me, we are over a hump of the disastrous offseason. Losing to the Patriots would have been a disaster. It would have been, everyone would have labeled it as a failure. New England people would have been able to hang it over our heads. The fact that it went as incredibly as it did is great, and that's something we're going to ride high. I'm never going to forget that game. Now you get to a point where, okay, we're not at house money level yet. Beyond here's maybe house money level where, hey, anybody would label AFC Championship game, Super Bowl a success, even if it doesn't end the way we want. We're not quite there yet. And I think that now we're at that level of, hey, if we butt our heads up against Kansas City again and it doesn't quite get there, it doesn't mean we can't ever. It doesn't mean that we're never going to be able to, but it plants that seed of doubt that you're like, man, can we get past these guys when it matters? Or, they're not going anywhere. Brady was old enough where you could tell yourself it won't always matter like that. Mahomes is a year older than Josh. Like, it's just not, we're going to deal with them for a long time.
Right.
And needing to see us get by them once when it matters would do so much to just open up the range of options. And, Anthony, how have you kind of dealt with, that swing of, hey, we're not quite at house money area yet, but it's not, now it's more, what does the future hold for these two franchises?
Yeah, exactly what you said there. I mean, I have had my Bills haters friends and family members who are not Bills fans say to me, okay, you finally beat the Patriots. First off, they picked the Patriots to beat us, which I thought was stupid, right? And then I got to talk smack. But then, of course, you know, they're like, oh, okay, you beat the Patriots who they weren't that great, but now you have to face Kansas City and you have no chance, right? Like, oh, you're going to lose against Kansas City. So you're right that if we lose against Kansas City, those haters, that narrative continues, right? We have not beat them when it counts in the playoffs. But if we do, then what are they going to say? Okay, well, now you're facing Tennessee or Cincinnati. You know, they're not going to be as confident about us not beating one of those teams as they are about Kansas City, because Kansas City has beat us in the past. So it's not as much of a narrative. And, you know, they're right in a sense that we as Bills fans will feel the same way. Okay, this team is damn good enough to win a Super Bowl. They need to put up and you know, make the other team shut up at this point, because we don't want the narrative to be, well, the Bills were a really great team, but Kansas City was always better, right? And that's, you know, not where you want to be as a franchise. And I don't want to wait another year to beat them. That's for sure. Like you were saying before, I want to see it go back and forth between these two teams over the next few years. Let's rival it out in the playoffs every year. And I mean, I think most of us were expecting this to be the AFC Championship game.
Yes.
It kind of sucks that it's
a
in
shame.
the divisional round.
I think it's the two best teams in the NFL. I think that the team that wins this week is the favorite to win the Super Bowl, and it sucks that one of them won't even be in the Final Four.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, you got to put up now. You got to beat this team. I would love to kill all of the narratives now, so that none of them have anything to say. Then it's just win the Super Bowl, and then nobody has anything to say after that.
So, and outside of the big picture, you know, quarterbacks and what this game means, I think we all know those things. Eric, what outside of that part of it, quarterbacks and things like that, what are some of the concerns you have for the Buffalo Bills going into this game besides just Patrick Mahomes and what he can do? Is there any concerns on what their defense can do? I know they're not putting up the greatest numbers. They don't statistically measure well, but they can do some things and disrupt some things. And then some of the other parts of the offense that bring up concerns for you.
So I think for Kansas City, really frustrated Josh Allen in last year's AFC Championship game, especially in the first half. And, you know, by sending the cornerback blitz, they were blitzing the slot corner as well. So, and they were doing a 3-4. So the edge was kind of in tandem with the slot corner. And it really confused Josh, because, you know, he loves to roll out right, and he's comfortable doing that. And they kind of shut that down in the first half and forced him to make bad throws. So that's my number one concern, is will the Bills come back and have an answer for that? Because I think the first matchup this season, you didn't really get the real Kansas City Chiefs, right? I don't think teams in week 5, I think it was week 5, are given, you know, showing all their cards.
It wasn't even the real Buffalo Bills, right?
Right, exactly. Both sides, right? All the cards will be on the table in this game. So I hope the Bills can adjust. I think this team is more mature than last year. I think they do have the Kansas City game circled. I think they expected to go to Kansas City and play them. So I'd like to see those adjustments. On the offensive side of the ball for Kansas City, we know the Pat Mahomes, we know the Kelsey, the Tyreek Hill threat, but really it's been McCole Hardman, right? He's their leading receiver in the first game this year, and then last year he had a 50-yard run on them on an end around. So I mean, that's what you got to pay attention to when you play Kansas City. There's a lot of speed on the field, but everyone gets so worried about Tyreek Hill for the right reasons. They get so worried about Travis Kelsey, who crushed them last year, that they forget about these other guys. So it's good. It's a big challenge, huge challenge for the Bills.
I think the counter to that doesn't make me as worried is the fact that the offensive line for the Bills is playing so well right now. Their best in the entire season is in these last 4 or 5 games, which, you know, Rick Bates has been doing a great job, right?
Well,
so
I got a question for you, though, bringing that up, because I don't disagree. I think they are playing well, but something that Greg and I have had a lot of conversations about is at least towards the end of that regular season, I was a pump the brakes on this offensive line, because it was a muddled pass rush versus New England for the second game of the season against them. And then it was Atlanta, Falcons, Jets. And then again, the Patriots, their pass rush really went down. Judon had a terrible second half of the season. Right. Like, it wasn't the same as it was early in the year. And so there's still a lot of questions for me. And now you're going up against Chris Jones, Frank Clark. Do you have the confidence in this offensive line playing as well as they are? That I don't know that you can stop Chris Jones, but can they stop what happened in the last AFC Championship game? Where Chris Jones just ate our lunch.
Yeah, he ate Josh Allen up. But yes, because I think the thing that they are doing better now is Josh Allen's taking the run when it's there, right? So if those guys step up, Josh Allen could still juke one of them and run for 10 or 12 yards. And the run game helps with that. Last playoffs, we know we had no run game that existed whatsoever. This year's a totally different story. Singletary's definitely starting to hit his stride as well. That could be the difference in this game. When you do the play action, they're going to fall for it a couple times, right? It's not like they're totally selling out. Okay, you can do play action all you want, but we know you're passing the ball. So, I think that will help this offense get going, especially early on. They're going to run it with Josh Allen, with Singletary. They're going to, use the weapons they have at wide receiver. And I think that carries the momentum in the Bills' favor in the beginning of this game. At least I hope,
Eric, let's start with you here. I want to hear from both you guys. The similar question to how good has Rick Bates been, or has it been the competition? How good has Dane Jackson and Levi Wallace been, or has it been that, it hasn't been the greatest stretch of receivers we've gone up against? So we'll start with you, Eric. What are your thoughts on how big of a test this is and whether they're ready for the speed that Hill, Hardman, Pringle throw at you in this game on Sunday?
I think it's a huge challenge for Dane Jackson because I don't think he can match these receivers speed for speed or step for step, right? He's more of a good tackler. He's solid. He guesses. I mean, but to this point, he's been great. And we really haven't really missed a beat without Trey. But if we are going to miss a beat this season, it's going to be in this game, if that makes sense.
That first half against Tampa Bay is the one that scared me.
Right.
Yeah, it's tough for any team to play those receivers as well. But this receiving core, I wouldn't say they're as good as Tampa Bay's receiving core, but they're just a different kind of weapon. And it really plays into the weakness of Dane Jackson, right? Speed's not his thing. But I think you'll see him play deep, and then I think he can run downhill. And what Kansas City's done to us in the past, you run the receivers on the outside deep, and then it opens up Travis Kelce underneath. It opens up the running back underneath. So that's the strength of Dane Jackson, is to run downhill and tackle, right? So it'll be interesting to watch. I could see it going either way, but he's definitely going to get picked on in this game. Well, I think they did it last couple of games. They have picked on Levi Wallace, but he's answered the call. So I think now you'll see them go after Dane Jackson.
Well, they're gonna score points, right? That's the weird thing. You're gonna give them. They're gonna do what they do and score points on offense. But the thing I like about a guy like Dane Jackson, who, as we said, can make a play on the ball, right? Maybe more so than guys we had out there before. But Trey White not being there is a big problem with a guy like Kelce and Travis and Hill, but Tyreek Hill. But if our safeties are playing top notch, and that has saved us, and I think they're going to continue to play at that level and be the difference in this game. Our defensive backs are good for a reason. It's because they all work well together. They know what their roles are, and they do it. And against this team, that's exactly what you have to do. Matt Milano's playing in this game. We know what he's going to be doing. It's going to be him on Kelce a lot. So they have to step up and be able to continue to play their role in this defense. Bend but don't break, give up a few points here and there, but as long as you're the team who makes the most plays in the game defensively, you're going to win it. And I have confidence that our defense can do that more so than theirs.
Well, let's transition right into predictions. People want to rant, so we're going to start with Anthony. People want a little bit. I know you're feeling under the weather, but they're calling for it here in the chat. Give us your guys' predictions of how you think this game's going to go, where your confidence level is at, and a score prediction.
You want to start with me? I'm sticking right to where I was on Tuesday night on the hoof, right? It's another, okay, this is the new boogeyman, right? Nobody needs to be afraid of the Patriots anymore. Dead and buried, I said after that. They're dead and buried. Nobody is allowed to say one damn thing about the Patriots from here on out when it comes to the Buffalo Bills. We own them as much as we own the Miami Dolphins at this point. So that's it with them. The real boogeyman now is the Kansas City Chiefs. You have to be worried about it, but you have to step up. I keep coming back to that image of Stephon Diggs on the field with the confetti coming down and that team celebrating. And that, to me, just was the motivation for the entire season. From that point forward to right now, when it really counts again against that same team, this whole team feels that. This whole Bills team feels what Stephon Diggs did on the field watching that team celebrate. And we want it more than they do. That's the big difference in this game. We want it more than they do, even if it's on their home turf, even though they're going to have a stadium full of fans. We want it more than they do. All we have to do is score once more than they do. All we have to do is hold them one less score than we do. And I'm confident we can do that. My score prediction, I think we're going to hang with them. We score first, then they're going to come back, obviously, and it's going to go back and forth. Then we score in the fourth quarter and stop them on defense big time for a 34-24 win overall. So 10-point victory for the Bills in Arrowhead.
Love it.
Yeah, well
Love it.
said.
Eric, how about you, man?
Destiny. Kill
You
all
know,
the boogeymen.
This is the game, right? This is Josh Allen just going to be secondary to Pat Mahomes his whole career? I mean, he needs to rise up in this game, and I expect him to be on fire. I want to see high-end Josh. We don't want to see cold Josh, right? So coming off the game he had last week, I think it'll absolutely carry over. I think he's more mature this year, right? Team's better. Like Anthony said, they want it more. They're going to be ready. With that, I don't know if you can you can't really stop Pat Mahomes like we've talked about. So I'm going to go with a 36-35 victory for the Bills. The Bills finally,
yeah, that's a hard one.
Come down the field and score on the last drive.
Oh my God.
Right. How many games have they dropped this year?
You're really killing us, Eric.
My heart monitor on my Apple Watch might break.
Yes.
Might call the cops. Like, you know, how they call the ambulances for you.
It'll call the ambulance on your behalf.
Exactly. But it reminds me of the Denver-Baltimore game, right? Double overtime. This game has that type of feel for it.
Oh, gosh.
No, we appreciate it. If you guys want to hear more great opinions and analysis like that, make sure you're checking out The Hoof Tuesday nights, 9:00 Eastern time. Always there, putting out the best stuff. We appreciate you guys. Let's hope for an awesome game this weekend. Yeah. I'm ready for it. Check out, you see their handles here, Anthony, at Anthony Romeo NY, at E Brown Hoof. Make sure you check them out. Follow those guys. Whew. We'll talk to you guys after the Sunday,
guys.
Man. Yeah, hopefully we're back on next week, right?
Woo,
right at the same
have
time
to do it again.
Let's go.
Have to do it
That's
again.
right.
That's right.
Exactly.
Keep us busy.
All right, feel better, brother.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Talk to you guys later. Oh, and right back at it. Our man, Anthony Prohaska, disguise coverage, jumping on. How we doing, brother?
I wanted to introduce him because I butchered his name in my promo earlier, and he gave me a hard time.
You didn't butcher it. You were close.
I'm like I'm an old man, and once I say something one way, it's like I'm becoming my father. I'm less of a jerk than he
You're
is,
like the.
I'm becoming my father in that,
like the boomers in the Geico commercials.
Yeah, you can't get him to say it right no matter how often you try. So I apologize.
It's cool. No, you are a gentleman and a scholar, and I appreciate you. I also appreciate that. Dave dropped that super chat earlier and mentioned some film room breakdown stuff from last night's episode. That was pretty cool. But I mean, I'm doing good. I'm excited.
Take the hat off once in a while too. Lauren's in here.
I take it off several times, but now because I'm not trimming the hair or shaving out of superstition. So Lauren knows. She knows. So I've also done a
signature hat. It's also like a burglar hat a little bit.
Oh yeah, I got a lot of. I mean, I'm a G, so you gotta represent and show it.
That's the one thing I use to describe you all the time. And when people are like, "Hey, what's Anthony?" Like, well, he's like a G.
He's a G who talks football. I talked with Lauren on Twitter
and Harry Potter.
And Harry Potter.
It's just like all G's.
What are describe Anthony in two things? Got it. Wu-Tang and Harry Potter. And that's it. Right. I talked with Lauren on Twitter about wearing a hat. I was like, no, there's plenty of stuff where I'm not wearing a hat. But
I got receipts.
I got
have video. Yeah. So let's start with the film room, and you guys did so much work kind of digging through what we're going to expect here, and you saw some of the things we talked about with Eric and Anthony Romeo.
That's good. That's good.
That's
real good.
It's not a lot of Marv energy going on, but
no, more patchy.
I can see it. So as we come in here, I think Anthony Romeo said it well that this is the boogeyman now. This is that hurdle that we have to convince ourselves, that we have to show ourselves, and that I believe that Bill's locker room is confident. I believe that Bill's locker room genuinely knows they can win this game, but there's still a piece of it in the back of their minds that they need to prove to themselves they can do it when it matters. What were some of the things that stood out to you as you did the legwork here on the film room?
I think, first of all, I think that's a huge point. Like the old Ric Flair adage, to be the man, you got to beat the man. And the Kansas City Chiefs are the man in the AFC East, as much as, nobody likes it. And then you combine that with all the narratives, but also like the way things are falling. Like, is Mahomes, Allen, the new Manning, Brady? And it's like, oh yeah, it could be. And then everybody's like, okay, but which one's going to be the Manning and which one's going to be the Brady? Because no disrespect to Peyton Manning, nobody wants to be the Manning. You want to be the Brady because Brady came out on top. But what I think came out in the film, two things. One, the Kansas City Chiefs are a much different team than they were in week 5, just going back to that and want to hit with that. But, taking a look at Kansas City, I watched a lot of Chiefs tape this year and especially this last week in all these film room episodes. And they have vulnerabilities. They've got deficiencies. Like, we've said it on the post game, how many times every team in this AFC has a flaw. They have a weakness at some point. That's what made this Bills team, Greg, to use your quote, that's why everything is on the table. They could run the AFC in playoffs, or they could lose in the first round. Like, there was so many variables, but I think there's several deficiencies for the Chiefs on both sides of the ball, even with their offense. But the Bills have their deficiencies as well. And so it's really coming down to this ultimate chess match between two really good teams with two tremendous head coaches, and each team has a tremendous offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator, and this giant chess match of off the field and on the field really begins. And it's shaping up to honestly be something special. It could be the game of the year, regardless of what the Super Bowl looks like. There's a lot of potential for this one because of how good the teams are, but also because they each have several pieces that they have to worry about. And then you have that game of mitigating and trying to maximize and going from there.
I got to counter. You said you don't want to be the Manning. Manning had a better postseason record against Tom Brady-led teams. I do want that for Josh.
Well, no, against him directly, but like overall,
yes.
like I want the Brady championship piece, not the Manning championship.
Sure.
Gotcha. Peyton Manning's better than Tom Brady. I don't have time to explain why.
I said that for about 12 years.
I really worked hard at it.
Cling to that one. I even tried Drew Brees for a little while. I was like, Drew Brees is technically a better quarterback.
I finally gave up.
There's just nothing about Brady makes sense. I made my peace with that. He's the best quarterback of his generation, like hands down. Because I genuinely, because I thought about it for so long, I just don't think in today's day and age, comparing, especially the quarterback position, comparing these guys to like I know the big one was always Brady and Montana. The eras are just so completely different. I mean, how many games did Joe Montana miss because it was legal to just dump a QB on his head or clothesline them in the face? And it's also like comparing at that time, it was like, oh, Joe Montana and Johnny Unitas. Johnny Unitas played in an era where he called his own plays on the field. Right. And he was the coordinator basically while he was passing. Teams weren't even that pass oriented. There's all these generational gaps. So I made my peace with Brady as the best of his generation, but the whole greatest of all time, I think that gets murky based on crossing the generational divides of football, because the game is just so different nowadays versus when it was in the 80s. And also, I hate Tom Brady.
Yes. Yes, I could see that in the mental gymnastics that you just went through.
I do it well.
I asked the other guys this, the Hoof guys, and I want to talk to you because we talked a lot about last week, the highs and lows and the anxiety going into the game. And I know you're a very superstitious guy. I know you are a fan first, like the rest of us. For me, this week's gone by quick, Anthony. Like, it has not been this dragging, high anxiety. Like, there is anxiety because it's this big game that I've been waiting a whole year for. This was the game that I've wanted and waited a year for, but it's not like the Patriots game where, like, yes, I want to win this game and continue on to the AFC Championship and get back to where we were a year ago. But if you lose to Patrick Mahomes, like, that's not the worst thing in the world. Like, I can live with that and go on to next year. Where are you at as a fan, anxiety level going into this game? Are you on edge? Are you feeling pretty good? Is it a coin flip? You don't really care? Where are you at?
You know what's weird is, first, awesome pull for Lauren's comment. Amazing Little Mermaid reference. I really appreciated that from Lauren just now. But I've gotten better as the week has gone on. Like, as I'm watching the film has kind of subdued the anxiety. Like, I've just really come around on the idea, knock on wood, I've really come around on the idea that the Buffalo Bills are a pretty good football team. What? And right, I know it's crazy. And the Kansas City Chiefs are, again, like we've said, are a good football team, but they've got their flaws. But if I'm looking at it from a pure fan perspective, my anxiety is still high. I hate the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't like Mahomes. Off the field reasons, I hate Tyreek Hill. Like, I tell you,
he's my least favorite player in the league off the field.
I'll tell you this right now. I dislike the Chiefs so much, okay, because of Tyreek Hill and Frank Clark. I'm not going to dive into it too much. If the Patriots played the Chiefs in the playoffs, I would root for the Patriots.
Oh, wow.
I hate the Kansas City Chiefs because of, as much as I hate Belichick and that whole crew, as far as we know, none of them are doing the off the field things like several of those people. And I try not to I know majority of professional athletes are not ideal human beings.
What?
But until you're really, I know it's all these weird revelations we
You're
have
just
on the show
dropping
tonight.
facts.
I know I'm
Yeah.
dropping truth on this one.
That's right.
That really weighs heavily, combined with the fact that they beat the Bills twice last year, and they are still the Kings, and they are still the bully on the block, and they're a good football team. Daniel gets that hot take from me. The Bills are good. It's a tough thing, like all those things combined. So from a pure fan perspective, I'm high anxiety because I don't want another offseason of being like, oh, we lost to the Chiefs again. And then it's like, okay, how do we go into this offseason trying to beat the Kansas City Chiefs again? And who needs to take a jump? And what do we do in free agency and the draft? And it's similar to the conversation we had to have last year. And I don't want to start to have that complex in our head of like, here's this hump that we can't get over. I don't want to have to deal with it again for another offseason going into another year where we're going to have to play the Chiefs again in the regular season. We're high chance we see them in the playoffs, so on and so forth. So my anxiety's high. From an objective perspective, I'm calmer, right? The analyst in me is calmer. But from a fan perspective, yeah, I'm on the edge of my seat, ready to jump through a window.
So I got one. I love the tweet that you put out earlier, and it was going through the progression of the run game here. And I'm going to bring it up on the screen because I want people to see the way that they've gone through it. And the last time you were on, you helped explain some of the differences visually between gap runs and zone runs. Well, you dove in a little bit further and actually went through showing how much more prevalent it's become and how it's made the Bills genuinely two-dimensional. Why don't you walk the fans a little bit through here, the progression of what you researched?
Sure. So we've spoken about it on the show, this progression in the Bills' offensive run game, going from a zone scheme or less gap, I should say, to a heavy gap scheme. And you see it right there. Weeks 1 through 13, 27% gap runs. Weeks 14 through 18, 48% gap runs. The wild card round versus New England, 54% gap runs. And you see that week 14 through 18, fifth most in the league. The wild card round, that was the second most gap runs from a usage percentage in the wild card round. But all of that, right, is useless if it's not translating to production. Like, who cares how much gap they're running if they're only running for like 5 yards and they suck? But you look at that, weeks 14 through 18, 809 rushing yards, second most in the NFL at that time. And honestly, you can't throw certain plays out. Seattle was number one in that time because Rashad Penny had like 360-plus yard runs that just like put him, I think they finished with like 912. So the Bills were close based on like an explosive run differential. And then also looking at Devin Singletary, weeks 14 through 18, 375 rushing yards, which was the eighth most in the league on an individual level. And if you gave him another like 50, 60 yards, he'd be very close to the top 5. So the Bills started to hang their hat on this physical, athletic, mean running scheme up front, pulling Ryan Bates, pulling Mitch Morse, pulling Spencer Brown, Deion Dawkins getting healthier, even Darrell Williams starting to get involved in this a little bit. And it's also meshed well with Devin Singletary's skill set and his timing. And they've done two things this back end of the stretch is in finding their ability to hang their hat on the gap runs, but also leaning into Devin Singletary as RB1, and everything is just meshed really well. And I think that's part of the reason you've seen this offense start to be more efficient from a pass perspective as a whole. And yeah, it's been really impressive to watch on film just how they've changed, and also coincides well with how teams have successfully attacked the Kansas City Chiefs on the ground, which is a very exciting thing.
So kind of with this is something Eric and I have talked about this for a few years of like zigging when everyone else zags, and how the league really comes full circle in a lot of ways. Yes. Early in the year,
I hope you're going with this where I think you are, because I love this conversation.
Well, I don't know if I am. We'll find out. But so like in a way, the cover 2 came back a lot this year, right? Like we saw that come back, and people were like, "How the heck do you beat cover 2?" And it's like, dude, we're back to the early 2000s again because that was dominant. Like the league always comes back to stuff. Do you think some of the success in this run game and going this route is twofold, that it benefits the Bills personnel, but also the league isn't designed on the other side of the ball to stop this type of power game, and that everybody's running a different type scheme, and then everyone's zigging and you're zagging, and now you're bringing a different run game that everyone's used to defending. So is it a little bit both personnel plus you're kind of going against the grain of the way the rest of the league's going?
Yes, that's exactly where I was hoping you were going. This has been like a theme that I've been so excited to like research and watch and study. I talked about it with Seth Kalina from PFF when I had him on Disguised Coverage. I talked about it with Nate Tice. This whole idea of, you hit it, football is cyclical, right? Yeah. And so you had you talk, especially from a defensive perspective, you've got these dominant defensive schemes, to get with that. And like, it was the cover 2 and like the Tampa 2 evolution. And then everybody was like, oh my God, we all got to do cover 3 because look what the Seahawks did. And then now it's starting to shift a little bit to the tight front and 2 high looks because of what Brandon Staley and did in LA with the Rams, and because of what his exactly him coming from that Fangio tree and what Fangio did in Chicago and all this stuff. And offenses are a huge part of that too. And defenses have been built to stop the passing game, specifically spread offenses, and then zone runs couple very well with spread offenses. Spread offenses usually are in 11 personnel, so 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers, and zone runs pair very well with the spread offense, right? Yeah. There's only a certain amount of looks you can get to in a spread offense because of your alignment, because of what you got going on. You just can't get to everything. But when you have offenses that are not doing what defenses expect them to, that's obviously good for the offenses. So that's part of the reason why, like, you take the Bills Colts for an example, to put it in perspective for everybody listening. The Bills are built to kind of defend the Kansas City Chiefs. They are built to defend spread offenses. Mm-hmm. They're not built to defend offenses who are like, nah, we're just going to run right at you. Yeah. We're going to run trap.
It's what worried me about the Patriots this year. And, when I assumed what they were going to do with the $25 million they spent on tight ends and just chose not to do. But what I was worried about is that they were going to build a modern 2 tight end smash mouth kind of offense that they can run at you, but they can pass it anytime they want because they have 2 athletic tight ends. And I was worried
if they bring Bill O'Brien in, if McDaniels leaves and Bill O'Brien comes in, maybe they will, but we won't talk. We'll
let that go. Yeah. But another piece of the run game, Jessica here asking a really good question. We saw there were some, formations that on paper you would think were 5 wide and no back, but they weren't, because they actually had Isaiah McKenzie in the backfield with Josh. They literally ran some read option with Josh and Isaiah McKenzie. They
could have gone either way on those plays too.
Oh man,
both options were open.
Yeah, well, and then they also had a few where, if you're going to leverage, especially what we had, it's different against KC. Against New England, it was wanting the speed in there against Hightower and Bentley. Against KC, it's wanting to take advantage of the youth and aggression that Bolton and Willie Gay and some of those guys are going to show, maybe over pursuing, trying to go after a guy like McKenzie. Maybe talk a little bit about what that has added in, the manufacture touches, the jet sweep, him literally in the backfield, and how they've really started. I've been really pleased how they've balanced Beasley and McKenzie with those run usage.
I think the balance is key, and I think you nailed it. One, it's a different look and alignment and formation that defenses have to account for. It's one more thing that defenses have to be aware of. So that's a plus.
Like Tommy Doyle.
Exactly, like Tommy Doyle.
Correct.
And amazing tight end, Tommy Doyle, the prince that was promised. And then having the speed piece, I think, is key, right? McKenzie's skill set, I keep going back to it all the time. I know a lot of people are on the whole, like, McKenzie over Beasley. He's better than Beasley. He's better than Beasley. Their skill sets are different.
So different.
Yes, they're completely different. And part of the reason why, in the wild card and in week 16, you see McKenzie balling out against the Pats is because McKenzie, he's very good with his speed, with his burst. He's great on these deep overs. Deep overs are fantastic against man coverage and also against single high coverage, whether it's zone cover 3 or single high man cover 1. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, cover 1. The Pats do love to do all that stuff. So McKenzie is built to succeed against those Patriot defenses, and he has. Then you're going to see games where teams are going to play more too high and they're going to play more zone. That's a Cole Beasley game, right? And so I think McKenzie being involved in this offense is a nice gadget piece and niche piece that you can pivot to, because it's all about having these pivots. And then specifically in the run game, that's when I saw that comment earlier from Mark. That was a really good one. In the run game, it's nice to just have another chess piece that you can use. I don't want to compare the two, and maybe it's because they both wear number 19, but look what Deebo Samuel does for that 49er offense when he gets in the backfield. And I'm not saying McKenzie.
Wait, so you're saying Isaiah McKenzie is
exactly.
No.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. Not doing that. What I am saying is that Levi Wallace gets targeted a ton on third downs, and it's a problem. Aaron, you know about it.
Heard it.
I think what McKenzie does coming out of the backfield, whether it's in the run, whether it's in coming in motion, whether it's swing passes, all these things, he gives the Bills a different element from a look and alignment perspective, but also the speed is huge. His speed is real. The one thing Devin Singletary had more of was more burst and like long speed to get to the edge and hit those things. So now you put McKenzie in the backfield. You have a guy who can act like a running back and get to the edge, or he can run any routes out of the backfield. He can run these swings, and then you couple it in with the motion and the other alignments. So I think that's spot on. His addition and his progression towards the back end of the year in terms of his usage has been really helpful for this offense because it just gives them another pivot on top of all the other pivots. It gives them more options to attack a defense, and that's never a bad thing.
And one thing we've been talking about, the improvement along this offensive line, both in the pass game and in the running game, something that got brought up earlier when we were talking to Ken. I was talking about the end of year press conference that Brandon Beane had. I watched it back again today because I'm bored and I'm consuming all the content that I can possibly get. But most importantly, because that press conference really was a culmination. This season is a culmination to everything that was stated in that press conference. And that was really Brandon Beane setting the agenda for how do we go back to this game and beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Well, here we are with that opportunity, right? I didn't take that in that first matchup in the season. Like I wanted to get that win, but that was an in season. We meant what Brandon Beane was talking about was, all right, later in the year when you're meeting in the playoffs, how do you beat that team? And one of the things was Dawson Knox. What has Dawson Knox? We'll talk about him in the pass game and the threat that he's become and answering the call of now teams do have to account for him. But what's he meant to this offensive line and the type of blocker that he's become? Because I think it's one of the most underrated storylines. Everyone wants to talk about his touchdowns and his production, but he's also increased as a blocker at the same level that he's increased as a weapon.
I love that you brought that up. I think it's arguable, but I think you could label that as the most underrated story of this year. And this might be like a legitimate hot take for me. I think his progression in his run blocking trumps the progression that he's had in his passing game. You
can't run leak in some of those things if no one ever respects the fact that you're actually going to block.
Fantastic. And couple that with the mental piece of it, his ability to sell with his body language. I'm blocking. Just kidding. Even that progression has been solid, but he's been so good in the run game. And this isn't even a attempt at a cheap plug or whatever. Myself and Eric Turner in the film room have gone so hard when going over this offense and showing so many clips from Dawson Knox. He is pinning defensive ends, defensive tackles, linebackers. Go to the it's one of the Devin.
Are all the plays in your cap?
Yeah, I got them. All my notes are in here.
That's why he keeps the cap on.
Yeah, I just keep them close to my brain. It's one of the early Devin Singletary runs against the Patriots, and he pins Jamie Collins. He down blocks Collins, crushes him, moves him 3 yards inside, then chucks him into Godchow, and then wrecks the whole interior, and Singletary just goes around and has plenty of space. Knox is doing that with regularity, and that's a big thing that people don't talk about all the time with Rob Gronkowski. It's always the receiving touchdowns with him and Brady. Gronk is a tremendous blocker.
Really is, yeah.
Tony Gonzalez was a tremendous blocker. Even Antonio Gates could get it popping in the run game as well. And then even the other great tight ends like Ben Coates, Mark Bavaro, these guys who could receive but were tanks on the offensive line. And again, because what does it give you? It gives you a guy who's a receiving threat, but then the pivot, he's not a weakness in another area. If he's a plus matchup, you can start to get to more things. And that's part of the evolution of this.
Like a George Kittle nowadays.
Exactly.
Kittle is more the well-rounded one. He doesn't get the love because of the constant passing game fantasy value as Kelsey, but is actually the more well-rounded successful player.
Yeah. And on an offense that wants to run the ball and run these wide zones and outside zones in different combinations, Kittle is so important as the edge man so many times. And he's so athletic in both sides of it. Knox is shaping into that mold a little bit. His run blocking has been on point in both in terms of his physicality and his technique. It's been one of my favorite things to watch this year because, again, he's winning against a variety of opponents, linebackers, defensive ends, defensive backs, defensive tackles, whatever. He's driving people downfield. He's using that athleticism in the run blocking game, and it's been used to advantageous means for the Bills offense. Because again, it's another way to disguise looks, to hide things, to present different things, and get to more things in your bag because of what he can do and what his skill set brings now. It's been truly tremendous.
I want to talk about Lauren's comment here for a second, because it not only do I want to credit Knox for it, but I want to use it as an example real quickly here. So she says Knox seems to be getting more athletic. I watched him for years at Ole Miss, and this year he looks like a different player altogether. And he was an elite athlete at Ole Miss. He was an elite athlete at the combine. He was an elite athlete when he got drafted. The challenge was he needed time to develop, to put that to use to where he could play fast. And I don't think Dawson Knox is the only one where we're seeing that. I think we're seeing Ed Oliver being able to use the fact. Ed Oliver's always been an elite athlete. Wasn't able to always play at full speed, understanding what he needed to do and how to use his technique. We're seeing a late push from Harrison Phillips. We're seeing that those guys taking time to figure out, how do I use the gifts and skills that I have? Heck, part of that is Isaiah McKenzie seeing that this kind of breakout in the way that he's being used. And the reason I want to bring those up is I think that fans are very quick to decide the value and future of draft picks very quickly. And that I think we don't know the value and long-term placement of an AJ Epinesa, of a Carlos Basham, of even Gregory Rousseau, and that I think sometimes people decide very quickly, well, he was a healthy scratch 4 times. That's he obviously
he's done.
Pick. What a horrible decision. And that, well, hey, hold on. If you're the same people who are excited about Dawson Knox, is, hey, I told you not to lose faith. I knew he was going to be good.
You're talking. He's yelling at me.
I'm
right
yelling
now.
at you. Where are those people for these other young players that stepped into a veteran, ridiculously deep, playoff-ready team that were not ready to throw away development snaps on other picks? Where, you want to know what? If they got drafted by the Jets or the Falcons or the Jaguars or the Texans, they're probably getting tons of reps and maybe developing faster, but instead they're able to learn bit by bit. And that's why we're seeing some late season flashes from Boogie Basham, that we're seeing it's not just hustle and 7 spin moves. Now he's combining some moves together. He's putting some of those things together. So I just want people to have that same frame of reference. Not all of them will work out. Some of them are going to be guys that we hope would develop into more, and they won't. But we've seen enough of these guys have that delayed flash, that delayed development, that, hey, let's not write the book on these guys too early.
Isaiah Hodgkins, wide receiver 1.
Hey,
there you go.
Coming. No.
Patience is so key.
But seriously, maybe there is a path for Isaiah Hodgkins.
Look at here's. I mean, this one is probably on the not even probably is on the outlier. Look at what Logan Thomas is doing as a tight end. Like, it was such a quarterback coming out, and it was like, well, he can't really be anything. And when healthy, he's a legit top 10 tight end, plays himself into the top 7, 6, just 8 range. Like, patience is so key with draft picks and with development in any organization, in any sport. And I think that's part of the reason too why coaching turnaround is so problematic for teams, because coaches are like, okay, no, I only got 3 years. I have to hit on everybody right now. Oh, this guy's not doing it. All right, forget about him. And then you don't get to build the team. The Bills haven't had that. They've set this foundation and they allowed for growth and development. And yeah, it's so key. And you have to keep that in perspective all the time. I didn't love I'll use myself as an example. I didn't love the Basham pick coming out. I like what he's done towards the back end of the year. I'm still not very high on him, but I am by no means being like, yep, told you, knew he wasn't going to be nothing. Dude's in his rookie year. Like, you give them year 2 and year 3. Let's see what they can become. Ed's a great example of that too. Greg, you're on mute all the time. That's the biggest bingo.
Made it an hour and 20 minutes.
That's the biggest bingo.
That was the closest.
If this show is going to have the good karma and good luck, I got to hit all the boxes on the bingo card.
That's true.
My recommendation for you would be to wait until year 3 of Boogie Basham, then take a strong stance that we need to trade for another defensive tackle, because he's not, or another rotational DND tackle, because he's not enough. And then you will actually be the impetus for his breakout in that third year to be able to make that happen. I have no idea what that's in reference to.
We should also compare him to Aaron Donald, just for the hell of it, even though it doesn't apply.
Yeah, it's totally normal.
And I know you're a dude like me that digs into the DVOA when we're getting ready for a matchup. There was a few things I saw that stood out to me. I talked about them on the Wednesday show, and we could talk about them again here. I don't know if there's similar things that you saw. Give me a little bit of tidbits of some stuff that you saw in this matchup in that statistical area in DVOA that maybe stood out to you as something to keep an eye on here as we go into the game.
I want to give a quick mention to the one that you and I DM'd about the Chiefs being 25th in DVOA on 3rd and long, so 3rd and 7+ scenarios. I was very surprised by that with an offense like that, with the coaching.
You think they're so explosive, right?
Right. And I would be like, 7 yards is like a drop in the bucket and it's easy. I thought that was very interesting. Coupled with what the Bills defense
coinciding with their the first down statistics, and like that one thing that scared me the most is they're good at running on first down DVOA. Bills not good at stopping the run first down DVOA. If they lean into that and can get into 3rd and shorts, well, then we don't have to worry about those 3rd and longs. But if we can stop those first down runs and get them in the 3rd and longs, I think little things like that in a big game like this is the stuff that makes all the difference.
I'll throw one out there that really stood out for me was I hear all these people echoing that, the Chiefs defense is way better in the second half of the year. And that, yes, don't get me wrong, it improved, but their defense went from 27th, 28th in the league to 14th or 15th. They went from horrible to average. And with their offense, average was good enough to go on a crazy run and win 9 out of 10 and look great. I think some people have the perception that they became this great vaunted defense. And it's just that it was a huge increase. It wasn't that impactful, in the grand scheme of things. They just went from horrible to average.
Yes. And I focused on, Football Outsiders is tremendous with their DVOA and their line statistics. And I use that because I looked at some raw stats. The last 5 games for the Kansas City Chiefs defense, they've given up an average of 125.8 yards per game. And 2 of them have just been huge. They gave up 191 to Denver. They gave up 192 to the Chargers. They gave up 130 to Pittsburgh the first time. They only gave up 60 to Cincinnati, but that's because Cincinnati threw for 415 and Burrow threw for like 78 touchdowns in that game. And so that was like, okay, I want to see what it looks like with the advanced metrics. And 20th in rushing DVOA. But here's the real kicker for me. I mention this all the time, and I hope I said enough that people know. So power success, that's a big one for me with Football Outsiders. That is the measure of percentage of runs on 3rd or 4th down, 2 yards or less to go, that get a first down or a touchdown. That also includes runs on 1st and goal or 2nd and goal from the 2-yard line or closer. So from a defensive perspective, power success is measuring how often you're allowing teams to convert in that scenario. The Chiefs allow teams to convert 70% of the time in those scenarios, which is 22nd in the league. And you also pair that with where they rank in stuff percentage, which is the amount of tackles you make at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage. The Chiefs only do that 14% of the time, which is 26th in the league. Then you combine that with what you see on film, and you see Chris Jones just getting mauled on double teams and not really going hard in the run game. And you see the vulnerabilities that they have in the run game. That's really where I honed in on with, the DVOA and the advanced metrics there, because it pairs so well with the film. And I think that's really an avenue, we broke it down in the film room last night, Eric and I, that's really an avenue where they can attack this Chiefs team. I know we're a Josh Allen offense. The offense goes through Josh Allen, but this run game has real potential based on what you see in the film. And then the advanced metrics speak to that, where that's a vulnerability for Kansas City, right in the center of the field, right in that physical piece.
So, obviously love having you on here. Everybody who didn't have a chance or hasn't seen Anthony's work before, find him on Twitter at pro__ANT every Wednesday night with Disguised coverage on some Tuesdays and Thursdays, depending on which nights. Recently, both days with the film room, putting in all the work. Make sure you're checking them out. Anthony, what are you expecting to see Sunday, and what is your score prediction?
Not going to give a score prediction again because I'm superstitious. But what I'm expecting to see...
We thought we would get you this time.
No, you're not going to get me. Come on. I'm prepared all the time for this. Here's my big prediction with it. I've had, and I know you guys had Ken Swanson on earlier, who's fantastic, and he mentioned some of the things I'm about to say. I can understand how people have gone through the ideas of Kansas City kind of sleepwalking through the regular season, and the idea that they're like the Golden State Warriors, who were just like, dude, let's just get to the playoffs, and then once we'll flip the switch and we're good. people, said it. A couple Chiefs fans were in the film room last night saying it when we were showing the Denver film, and they were like, it was week 18. They didn't care, yada, yada. And we're ignoring the fact that it happened several other games, but that's fine if we want to go with that. So my prediction, what I want to see, let's test if it was the Chiefs sleepwalking through the regular season or if it's something more. Come out. I expect the Bills to get physical early. I expect to see a decent amount of runs on that first drive, testing the Chiefs right away. Hit them in the mouth. Go for shots, test the mentality of this team, make them tackle, make them have to defend the run, see if you can get up early, and let's see if it really was, they're just coasting and, no, we're going to get to the playoffs and flick the switch, or if there's something more to it. I expect the Bills to be aggressive early, both in terms of their play calling, in terms of downfield shots and trying to push the ball, but also aggressive from a physicality standpoint. I think they're going to try and beat the Chiefs up again like they did in week 5. I know the team is different, but I think they're going to be physical. I think they're going to be aggressive. I think we're going to see another Bills game with a chip on their shoulder that presents itself on the field in the form of running and big hits on defense where you hear pads pop. And I think the Bills bring that physicality early to really test the mentality of the Kansas City Chiefs.
I love it.
Love it. Absolutely. Make sure you check out all Anthony's work. Love having him here as a part of Cover One. You're going to love checking out everything that he does. We'll talk to you soon. Stay comfortable.
Hopefully a victory Sunday post-game show with you, Brian.
Hopefully. I appreciate you guys setting up the extravaganza again and having me back, and stay calm. We'll see each other in the Twitterverse, and then hopefully on Sunday for another, I'm not going to even say the words, but yeah, till then, gentlemen, appreciate you guys.
Have a great post-game show.
Take care, brother.
Later, guys. And now, batting cleanup, taking us home. Our man.
Save the best for last, right?
All over Western New York,
Don't
everywhere.
that.
Our man, Sal Capaccio. How we doing, sir?
I'm good. Don't say that. No, I'm not. No, best for last. You guys have great guests. You do a great job.
Yeah,
Thank you. Good Friday night to everybody out there. My flight leaves in like 10 hours.
I was gonna say I'm surprised that you're not in a hotel room right now. That you're still staying in Buffalo. You're flying it tight there this weekend.
Yeah, actually took my son to see the Van Gogh exhibit tonight.
I've heard it's cool
in Williamsville, and
he's the immersive thing. Like
yeah, the immersive thing. Very cool, right? I mean, he's 8, so it was cool. Like we just yeah, I figured it was just a night out. Like I'm not going to see him for a couple of days, so it was dude's night out, and I got tickets for the Van Gogh thing. So we went over there. It's kind of boring. I draw stick figures. The coolest thing was me explaining to him about him cutting off his ear. Like that was totally the coolest thing of the night, right? And then we went and got some food, played some games. Can I say a name? We went to Tully's, right? I don't know if I can say it on here. It was right next door, so. Had a nice night and got home. Now he's watching some Disney movie downstairs. So it's all good.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah,
it sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
So wait, real quick, before we dive into the matter of the night, I got to know, how did parents versus kids floor hockey night go?
They do not do that in my group.
So we're in different groups.
Yeah. You guys, the younger kids did it. Now here's what's really bothering me though. When Max was in Aaron's kids group, like that age, last year, we still didn't do it. Like they did it this year. I'm like, dude, I wanted to be like Peyton Manning playing dodgeball against the kids on Saturday Night Live, drilling some kids into the wall or something, letting them know who's boss.
Yeah. Chad, I thought we were going to get that. So we had Chad from Expected Buffalo site. He was on our kids versus parents team, and he showed up. He hasn't been there all that much this year. His wife's gone to the most of them, but he showed up for that, and I thought, we got our ringer. Like he's gonna come out here and he played it soft. He was playing like we were playing before. I was expecting some slap shots and stuff, but we didn't get it from him.
No, that's all right. But that's cool. How'd you do? You didn't pull a hammy or anything?
I was gonna say you was back in one piece at least.
I came back in one piece. I let up one goal. I felt bad for the kid because it was like our whole shift, and I was just stopping the goal the whole time. I was like, "You're not scoring on me, kid." And then like I could see his face, and I was like, "Okay, fine, you can score on me." So I did give up one goal, but I think if Chad was gonna break down my analytics, I think I did better than most Sabres goalies this year.
Yeah, hey, that's a good one. I like that. I'm looking, man. You guys got a good chat going here. What's up, Jeff A, Jessica, Ron, RJ singing the Sal Capaccio song in type form there. Mike, Jason, Mark, you guys are great. I saw someone reference John DeMarchi on there. I don't know if John's in there. John and I.
John's awesome.
John and I went to Syracuse together, but He's older than me. I think he was a grad student when I was a undergrad. So John, what's up, man? We communicate a lot. So
John is constant in here supporting us. We love John.
Yeah. John's great. I remember he actually worked at WGR years before me. He's old, so you're old, John. So it's all good. You still look good though, brother. You still look good. I'll tell you
there you go.
So Sal, as we get ready for this and we start to go in, a lot of we've talked about, and we asked Kent about the two sides of this narrative of what this rivalry could be versus what it actually is. And that, I think Bills fans have built it up that, hey, this could be the Brady versus Manning. And that, I've tempered it. They're like, hey, we got to beat them in a game that matters to make that real. How are you seeing that mentality with, being around the team and seeing that, it's Anthony Romeo was on with us and called them, they're the real boogeymen. People had the Patriots built in their mind, but this is the actual boogeyman we got to be able to overcome. Do you think they see that the same way and know that, hey, this is the one we got to figure out how to get over?
Yeah, I think they feel it that way. I don't think they think they're like the boogeyman and, Jason and Friday the 13th that keeps coming back or something like that, like New England was for so long for the Bills. But this is the standard. I mean, let's go back to the end of last season. The Bills lose in Kansas City. We meet with Brandon Beane afterwards and Sean McDermott on Zoom calls, to wrap up the season. And it was made completely clear in those calls, like, we got to beat that team. That's the standard. This is what we have to do. And Brandon Beane even told us that in his exit interviews, he told Bills players, our goal next year is to have the AFC run through Buffalo, to win the AFC, the number one seed, to be the team with home field advantage. They didn't get that, but they're still back to where they were last year, granted a round earlier, to beat this team. Everything they did in the offseason was to beat this team. So I do think the Bills know that that's the standard. That's what they have to climb. That's what they have to get over. But, they already saw themselves do it once. And as you guys know, I mean, visualizing yourself, athletes do this a lot. They visualize themselves in a certain situation. This group doesn't have to visualize themselves beating Kansas City. They already did that 3 months ago.
In Kansas City, right?
That's right. So right. I think that at least the mental hurdle part of that has been cleared, but it certainly is the team, and it's going to be the team for a while. And look at the AFC for the better part of 20 years. We know it was Brady, but it was also the Steelers and Roethlisberger that they were there for a while. We know that the Ravens had their run. There were just a few teams that, and Peyton obviously with the Colts, and every once in a while another team would emerge. But basically it was the Patriots and the Steelers and the Colts for a long time. And I think you're going to see that with the Bills and the Chiefs, maybe the Chargers, maybe the Bengals.
Yeah, Chargers, Bengals rotating for that Roethlisberger spot.
Sal, I'm so happy you brought up that press conference because I've talked to almost every single guest we've had on tonight saying, I watched that again today because at the end of the year, Brandon Beane was so open and honest and in ways like calling out that tight end position, which made Bill's Twitter and draft Twitter go nuts. We're drafting a tight end. We're going after tight ends crazy, but it was really specifically.
I overreacted to it.
A lot of people did. Yeah. Like I haven't heard a GM really call out an individual position in that type of way. And so he addressed the defensive line because that was another spot he called out, and not allowing Mahomes to sit back there, put a lot of assets into that. They've managed that rotation throughout the year to get to this point. Dawson Knox was a big part of that press conference and calling him out and basically saying, hey, defenses don't have to game plan for our tight end position. A lot of this has changed. Dawson Knox has answered that call. But none of it matters if it doesn't come through in a game like this. Like that was all coming to this weekend. Everything that they've done is coming to this weekend. Do you think this team has done enough to answer the call from Brandon Beane last offseason to put themselves in a position to get over that hump here this weekend?
Yeah, and I wonder too, Aaron, if you go back and you really think now that we have a full 12 months essentially since that press conference, I wonder if he was sending a message to Brian Daboll too.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like, hey, there's things here that we need to do better to get the tight end involved. We've drafted this guy, in Dawson Knox. He's evolving because they never addressed it. Like, I mean, they went out and got Jacob Hollister, right? But you're right. They never did that. Talking about running the ball. They kept saying, Brandon Beane told all of us at every turn they believed in their running backs. And we didn't believe them.
Right.
Because we thought they were drafting Travis Etienne or Najee Harris or whatever, right? Now, maybe some people didn't, but people just kept, no, this is green. He keeps saying how much he likes the running backs, but he was true about it. And I think he was, in a lot of ways, subtly sending a message to the entire team, to his entire coaching staff. It's not just Brian Daboll, it's Sean McDermott, it's the running backs coach and the offensive line coach and everybody that, hey, we have the pieces here. We've built this. We have to be better in everything we do. We have to get better internally. I can help you from external. I can go get players. I can draft guys. I can sign free agents, but we have to get better here. And Yeah, I do. What comes up, what keeps coming back to my mind is, guys, this is the moment they've prepared for since January 24th of last year, when they basically said, we have to figure out a way to stop the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
They did everything, all of their moves. They went out and they drafted Greg Rousseau and Boogie Basham to get longer and more athletic on the offense, on the defensive line. I mean, not so much longer with Boogie Basham. You get the point, though.
Right.
F.A. Obata.
Yeah.
Let's not forget, they brought him in, the length, right? I mean, this is what they did. They went out and made sure, like, we have to find a way to beat that team.
Almost to their detriment against like a team like Indy, right?
Yeah, it almost snagged
100%.
them with New England, Indy, Tennessee.
Like, we'll sacrifice, we might sacrifice some things on how we get there, but eventually we're good enough to be able to face this team again. And when we do, we got to beat them. So we got to gear up to beat them. And guess what? They did it week 5. And then they went inconsistent, lose, win, lose, win, lose, win. They rotated losses and wins for a while. But to me, this is, whatever the word you want to use, an indictment, a litmus test for everything they did for 12 months, literally was geared towards Sunday and what's going to happen. And that's why it's so interesting.
Well, so talk about tests and litmus test. That's a term we've used for, we were slow to buy into, hey, they discovered this Rick Bates solution at guard, and that Ryan Bates has become this, guy that just galvanized the whole offensive line. And now rightfully, it's the best we've seen this offensive line look all year. 4 straight games with no sacks, the best running game we've seen the whole time. But then we brought it up that, hey, it was kind of a weird muddled rush with the Patriots. And then it was the Falcons and the Jets. And then it was another weird one with the Patriots. And that's no more. Now it's Chris Jones. Like, you're going to show, is he for real? Is he really the solution here? What do you think we're going to see there in that? Did we stumble on something here? Is maybe a longer term piece at left guard? And do you agree that, a test of, hey, if things possibly go right Sunday, it's going to be then Jeffrey Simmons right off the back of that? What do you expect to see now, seeing top of the top with Chris Jones?
I thought it was interesting. Ryan Bates was actually on One Bills Live earlier this week. And I've never really heard the Bills talk the way he kind of talked, where he actually literally said, we're going to go there and punch him in the mouth. Like, I'm like, wait a minute. Like, that's like bulletin board material almost. Like, he said that. I wonder if Sean McDermott said, hey, dude.
I think he said, right? Chris Jones was just another number on a jersey.
Right.
Something like that, right? It was kind of weird, like, hearing that. And then Deion Dawkins on a Zoom call a couple days later says he can't wait to see Melvin Ingram again, right? After what happened in week 1. And I'm thinking to myself, boy, I never hear these guys talk like this. This is kind of weird. It's out of character. I wonder if this is calculated. It's intentional. They're trying to send a message. I can't imagine Sean McDermott loves it, but at the same time, I don't know, because everything he does is kind of calculated as well.
Right.
But the message was, whether they should or shouldn't, whatever, they're going to try and go be physical. I think they believe that they can absolutely out physical this team. And I'll tell you something that stood out to me from the sidelines on week 5. And the day after the game, I go on the radio and I said, boy, the Bills hit everything that moved that night. They wanted to make sure that Kansas City knew, okay, I'm going to use a line from a movie here. Remember the night they played the Bills instead of the Titans, right? I mean, remember right? That's what they did that night. And I think, to me, it sounds like they have that same mentality, which is, we can out physical them. They're a finesse team. That's my words, not theirs.
Yeah,
right.
I'm trying to get any more bulletin board material here. But no, I believe they probably think that. They're more of a finesse team. The way that they play, they're not a real physical team. And yeah, this is a test. I mean, Chris Jones is a game wrecker. There's no doubt about it. But one thing that Chris Jones did last year, and the reason why he was such a game wrecker, is the Bills had no running game last year in that AFC Championship game. He was able to pin his ears back. Right. He's just, okay, I'm just going to go after Josh Allen. I don't have to worry about them running the ball. And that can't happen this year, obviously, because the Bills can run the football and they're much better. And real quick on your Ryan Bates point. So I don't know about long-term. I mean, I think that's something you have to evaluate when the season's over, right? I really like Ryan Bates. I always have. I think something that hasn't been talked about enough, and I've tried to bring it up this week too, is I think one of the big reasons why Ryan Bates has been so good for this team, I think he's a good player, no doubt. He knows all 5 positions.
Mm-hmm.
He is a guy who has played all 5 positions. And when you have an offensive lineman who knows everybody else's position, it makes everything go smoother with your communication to your left, to your right. Everybody's seeing the same thing. Ryan Bates, he can play up and down that line. He knows exactly what Mitch Morse is seeing and saying. He knows exactly what Deion Dawkins is seeing and saying. And I think that makes a very big difference.
Yeah, he talked about that a little bit in the type of preparation he had to do before setting into guard and having to prep for every single position every week because he didn't know if he would have to come in an emergency role and play everything. So there might be something to it there. I like what you talked about here with the physicality because Anthony Prohaska was just talking about this in that, there's this kind of idea that the Chiefs are just kind of lulling into the playoffs. They're so good and they're just going to flip on the switch. Anthony compared it to the Warriors in the playoffs type of thing. They're just going to flip this switch on. But we were talking to Kent Swanson earlier too. And there's something I think that's not getting talked about enough is how many games this Kansas City Chiefs team has played with deep playoff runs here consistently over the last 4 years. That adds up. Greg had it. He's way better at math than me.
11 extra games.
11 extra
games. The last 3 years.
That's not
everyone else.
Yeah, that's not nothing to play an 11 extra games. So whether it's a flipping a switch on or it is a true, hey, this team is finally wearing down a little bit of these long seasons is getting to them. I think the key is getting physical with them. Which way do you see this? Do you see it as a team that's, hey, they're just waiting to flip the switch on? Or do you think they are, starting to hit a little bit of a wall with playing so many games year in and year out? Is that a real thing?
I remember in the 90s when we used to say the same thing about the Bills, going to 4 Super Bowls, and boy, this is taking a toll on them. But they kept going back, but it did. Right. I think all of that football that those guys played at some point, it's got to wear on your body. And if they were resilient, I always believed that if they'd won 1 Super Bowl, like the first one, they probably don't go back to 4. I think what kept them going back to 4, but despite all that wear and tear on their body, was just the mental fortitude to try and get back to win, the Super Bowl. It is a lot of extra football. There's no doubt about that. I don't think they figured they'd just flip a switch. I think they kind of went through a little bit of what the Bills went through this year, especially like week 1 when they came out and they thought, oh, we're the Buffalo Bills. We're just going to throw these wide receivers out there and the Pittsburgh Steelers can't stop us. But guess what? They ran into teams that said, no, we've been gearing up all offseason for this. This is what we get paid for. We're defensive coordinators. This is how we make our money. And we're going to try and stop you. And I think they just, more than anything, just like the Bills had to do, they had kind of had to feel their way through what teams were doing against them. And I still think they're having a little bit of issue on that. They're getting some guys back. They're certainly not as healthy as the Bills. They're pretty healthy overall. They're certainly not as healthy as the Bills. So maybe I would say Andy Reid, I think, has always played the long game. What's always impressed me about him is his teams, they're always there at the end. And by the way, 4 quarters too. What's always impressed me is it doesn't matter what happens in the game. Andy Reid's teams are always playing till the end. I think he always plays the long game. So I do think there's some of that, which is, look, we get to the playoffs, we'll be fine. But I don't think it was at the expense of thinking we can kind of sit back and just kind of flip the switch. I think they were having troubles this year. And yeah, probably playing a lot of football, there's no doubt. I mean, there's only been 3 organizations ever, guys, to go to 3 straight Super Bowls. You want to name them? You know who they are? 3 straight Super Bowls. What
Vikings.
3 organizations? No, they didn't go to 3 in a row.
Bills, obviously.
Bills, right. Went to 4. The only team went to 4.
3 straight.
Put the guys on the spot. Let's see.
Yeah.
Or only 2 others have done it. No, it's the Patriots. Back in the early 2000s.
Oh, okay.
In the 1970s, Miami Dolphins, when they lost 1 and they won 2. But it's part of their undefeated season. But you think about over 50 years of Super Bowls, only 3 organizations have ever gone to 3 straight. That's how tough it is to do.
Yeah, and Kansas City was in an AFC Championship game.
That's right.
That's all that first year, right? So it's a lot of football going into that. But
the one other piece that Kent said that was interesting is that it's in the back of Chiefs' minds as well that they don't know. It's real quiet, and they're not sure. They've seen some of these things in the games that aren't quite what they've seen before, and they don't know. Is it because they're about to just burst out and unleash and show, hey, we're still these top guys. You can't beat us. We got it. Or is it because they're just hiding the fact that they're running on fumes and trying to just keep it together? And that he said, obviously we've seen it from Pat Mahomes so many times that we feel confident it's going to be everything that's there, but it's in the back of their minds that they're wondering, is there something they don't know about?
I think they are who they are at this point. We've seen enough of a body of work, but there's always that chance that they just explode on you because they're the Kansas City Chiefs and they have these players. But I think what's interesting is, look into some of you guys were going to some of the DVOA stuff earlier and things like that. But I think the yards after catch point is an interesting one here, which is the Chiefs. Basically, they've morphed into this. Not that they never did it. Of course, they like to get the ball in their playmakers' hands, but really this year more than ever, Patrick Mahomes is keeping everything short. He's just giving it to his playmakers and he's letting them use
3 of the top 10 in the NFL, I think.
Yeah, and
he's the quickest ball out of his hand too, I think.
I believe that's the case. And he has overall, as qualifying quarterbacks, he has the number 2 overall yards after catch from his receivers from all quarterbacks. Josh Allen has the lowest of all qualifying quarterbacks in the entire NFL of yards after catch from his receivers, which is incredible. And that's just so, but he also throws the ball deeper on average, a lot deeper on average right now than Patrick Mahomes this year. And I think the Chiefs have kind of morphed into this offense where, okay, like we're not this really big play, quick strike team, but we can still make those big plays because we can get it to the guys who can make it. And I think that's the kind of the way that they've been approaching it. But guys, you could go into this game and I expect them to test Levi Wallace and Dane Jackson. And Bills don't have Tre'Davious White. I wouldn't be surprised if they take a few deep shots down the field.
I agree. And that's something Greg and I have both been concerned about. Not saying that they're going to come out and take a lot of shots, but lull you to sleep a little bit with the short stuff and then, catch you on a double move and make you test that speed deep. But I do think some of that shallow stuff plays into the strengths of this Bills defense a little bit. 100%. Like one of the things when Trey White went out, there's no benefit to Trey White ever not being on a football field. I would never say that. But the thing I was interested in Dane Jackson's game is the guy's a solid tackler, right? Levi's been a pretty solid tackler throughout his career. So if you're banking on yards after catch, I like these corners in a game like that where, hey, you're not going to try to beat us deep and you're going to try to get the underneath stuff and have us come up and tackle you. Like I kind of like that strength. The concern about that for me is, does that play into an idea of being able to keep the Bills offense off the field, of them continuing to go shallow, putting slower drives together? I mean, I don't know if Andy Reid can stay patient enough to continue to put slow drives together, but do you think that they are going to go into this game with saying, hey, this has worked for us, the short passing game, we're going to just stay with this? And then as a side benefit, this keeps the Bills offense off the field.
I do. I think that's who they've been this year. I think that's what they realize their strength is. I would expect some screen passes in this game. They like to throw screen passes. I think Jerick McKinnon, what we saw last Sunday night against the Pittsburgh Steelers, could play an impact, a role.
Like they needed any more speed.
I'm almost glad that Edwards-Helaire is back, and I hope that it tricks them into not playing McKinnon as much.
Yeah, and and I will say though, to the Bills' benefit in this, at least they have seen now Jerick McKinnon on film in a game and how they want to use him. The Pittsburgh Steelers really didn't have that benefit. I mean, they know who he is. He's been in the league, but I don't think they understood how that Kansas City was going to use him necessarily. At least the Bills have seen it. I agree with you, Greg. Like, especially after coming off a shoulder injury, 3 straight games missed. Like, if the Chiefs want to put Clyde Edwards-Helaire back on the field for the bulk of plays, I think the Bills would welcome that, to be quite honest. But yeah, I think it is how they're going to want to play, and they're going to say, look, we can still get the ball into the hands of Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, and if the Chiefs can get to 3rd and 2 and 3rd and 3 and make sure that they can just keep the chains moving. But look, the first drive of that game in week 5, the Chiefs took over 7 minutes off the clock. They only got a field goal out of it. I think the Bills would gladly trade that. Fine. You want to keep us off the field? That's fine. We're just going to make sure you don't score a touchdown. I think that would be the trade-off the Bills would be willing to accept.
Those first, if they, obviously everybody remembers the 5 touchdowns in 10 minutes off the game clock and that ridiculous stretch of how they went from 0 to 42, so quickly. If the Chiefs think they're going to start against the Bills with 3 punts, a fumble, and an interception on their first 5 possessions, they're going to be in a very uncomfortable position. So I'm curious to see what they do to try to prevent another slow start against the Bills.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the start is very important for both teams. I think we've seen this year too. The Bills are a much better team when they're playing from in front.
And so take us through that a little bit here. We've put everybody on the spot that's come on tonight. Give us, how do you think this game's going to go about? And we're going to put you on the spot for a score prediction.
So I think the game's a little bit lower scoring than a lot of people think. Now, that said, what is the over-under right now? Do you guys know? 50?
It's gone 54.5 to 55. That
I saw 54.5.
Yeah, they're expecting, I guess, 28-27. That
okay. Well, I'm
Vegas line.
I'm a little bit lower than that. I do think that they'll get like probably in the 50s overall. I have a score that I have. I do the CBS pregame show in Buffalo, Channel 4. Shout out Buffalo Kickoff Live. With Josh Reed and Thad Brown and Matt Perino and Heather Prusak and Tim Graham, just so everybody knows. I want to get everybody in there. But anyway, on that show, I will be predicting the Bills win 27-24. That's my prediction. So I'll give that to you here. But I think it's a little bit lower scoring, exactly for what you said, Aaron, a little while ago, which is I do think as good as each quarterback is, one of the strategies in this game might be, let's just kind of control the clock a little bit. Make sure we don't make a mistake, give them an extra possession, give the ball to Patrick Mahomes, give the ball to Josh Allen. And the Bills have the number 1 defense in the entire NFL. Let's not forget that, right? I think it's going to be tough to score a lot of points on them. Boy, if the Chiefs can get to 30, I mean, heck, power to you, man. That's a great job because this is a really good Bills defense. So I do think it's a little bit lower scoring, probably than what the over-under is. I like the Bills. It's funny, Chopin the Bulldog asked me today, like, what's like the mentality going in last year to this year for me? And I try to think back, and I think what the difference for me last year versus this year was this. I think last year I felt, yeah, the Bills can win, but they got to kind of, they got to have some breaks go their way to win. They got to make sure, like, you got to get a bounce here, a fumble recovery there. And they did. They had a 9-0 lead. They had the muff punt. They got turned into a touchdown. They had to do that. This year, I think it's the other way around. I think the Bills should win unless some breaks go the other way, unless the Chiefs are the ones that get those things. That's the difference in how I feel about this game.
Well, I compared it very similarly, and I said the Bills are the only team in the NFL that if the Chiefs play their A game, the Bills can still beat them. I don't think there's any other team that if the Chiefs come out and play their A game, I think they beat anybody else. I think if the Bills and Chiefs both play their A game, it's a coin flip, and the Bills could still beat them with their best. And that obviously we're not expecting the historic performance we saw Saturday night, but that team, no team can beat that. No team can beat that performance that was on the field Saturday night. So I think the Bills have displayed that level, and that I think that's in the Chiefs' mind, that they know that, hey, just playing their best isn't even necessarily good enough because this team can hang with you even at your best level.
Well, it's like we used to say for years, Sal, when we would go up to play the Patriots, it's like, okay, you got to play clean football. Like you can't make these mistakes. This team will kill you. You can't give them an inch. I think the Bills are becoming that team to other teams finally.
Yeah. So what does the Chiefs A game look like? That's a question, right? What if I ask you that, like, Greg, what does that look like for the Chiefs A game? Because even when they're playing their A game, they're not their best defense. When the Bills are playing their A game, they're the best defense in the league. That's what they are. They've allowed 17 points a game. So I agree with you. Yes, the Bills, I don't disagree with your statement. I think it would take the Bills to play their A game to be able to beat the Chiefs on their A game, though. That's how good they can be.
For sure.
Right.
And they depend their defense. And I brought that up right before you came on, that people have talked about how much better it got. And it did, but it got way better because it was so bad to begin with. What they did do is introduce variance, and that defense started to, more turnovers, more sacks, more high variance plays. They still gave up points. They lost in a shootout to the Bengals. They barely squeaked by the Chargers in a shootout. They gave up a weird amount of points to the Steelers, who are a skeleton of an offensive team. There was a lot of performance. Even Denver at the end of the year, they gave up a weird amount of points. But with an offense like that, if you get an extra possession or two, it's all done. Yeah, like it's just, that's all that matters. You got them an extra possession. All of a sudden, a 7-point lead's 14, and you're chasing. That's what they did down the stretch. They introduced that variance, those high variance plays. That they give up some big plays, but they also turn the ball over. They also get the strip sacks. They also get those quick stops, and that's what I think they're going to be in a position to need to do, because I don't think they have the horses to do what the Bills do, where they dare you to go on the 12 to 15 play drives. We're going to keep everything in front. We're disciplined. We can hold you there. I think they know they can't do that, and I'm curious, what do they try to introduce to shake up this game and that level of variance?
Yeah, this is going to be a very interesting chess match. Two good coaches. I think the assistants are all good, right? And we know the love that Eric Bieniemy's gotten and that staff over there. Leslie Frazier, Brian Dable, of course, Sean McDermott, pupil student with Andy Reid. I do think that both these teams will have something different. I don't know what it is, something different cooked up in this game that maybe the other team hasn't seen, or they're going to try and do something.
They've been sitting on it all year.
Yeah, right. A little bit different. And by the way, not to get too far down the rabbit hole, but special teams could be really important in this game as well. A lot of times it is when you have a close game. Dave Taub is one of the best special teams coaches ever, basically, for Kansas City. The Bills have had some troubles punting. Obviously, lately they didn't punt last week at all, but they did a couple weeks ago.
I prefer that strategy. The zero.
They had 2 extra points blocked, remember, last week. And look, Dave Taub's going to try and do something to block a kick. I mean, if you see that, you're going to try. Now, sometimes it's just athleticism and length, but if they see something on film, they can do that. But at the same time, the Bills have actually had very good special teams overall for the year. They've just had a couple hiccups as of late with their punter and or kicking game.
Yeah, real quick too, not even specific about the game, because I know we're going to get you out of here because I know you got a long day tomorrow and got to get down there for the weekend. We were talking earlier on our Wednesday show, Bills fans and KC fans have been going headbutting on Twitter all week, and
some weird stuff.
We try to warn Bills fans that, like, we love Bills fans and they are always going to be one of the best in the league, but Kansas City fans are no joke. Like, they are also some of the best fans in the world.
Yeah.
Arrowhead's on my bucket list. I'm going to wait till my kids are a little older so I can take them to go to Arrowhead and see a game if it's still standing there. You've been there a few times now. What is it like to be in Arrowhead down there in a packed house? I'm dying to know.
It's a lot like Buffalo, really. There's not many stadiums that are so similar, but they are
built in the same year, weren't they?
Close to it, I think, if not the same. But yeah, they're both that bowl, the bowl that kind of surrounds you,
almost college style.
Yep. The fans are kind of right on top of you. They're great fans. They really are. I remember going to Bills games in the 90s when the Chiefs would come here in the playoffs. And even then, like, Chiefs fans were super nice. And I remember saying when I was like in college, like, boy, Chiefs fans are really nice, and I've always thought that. You go to Kansas City, they're also very nice. I've had some interesting interactions with fans over the years, shouting out, but they're usually generally pretty nice people. But it's a heck of a stadium from the atmosphere wise. But just like anywhere else, you get on them, you make a play or two, quiets down a little bit, right? And then you hear the other team's fans, and Bills fans will be there as well. It is interesting that the renovations they've made and things like that. The Bills Stadium still has that one tunnel in and out. It really kind of is for Kansas City, but they do have bowels, and you can go up and around. You have to get up. I will tell you, it is one of the highest press boxes. Don't like it. I'm sorry, like radio booths. It's one of the highest radio booths in the entire NFL. I feel bad for Murph and Eric because like Murph has to use binoculars basically to look down. And
it is a high stadium. Yeah.
Very high stadium. And the windows don't open in the radio booth. So like in Buffalo, even when it's 0 degrees, we're opening the windows. Murph's doing
you get a better feel for the
sound.
game. Yeah.
The windows don't even open. You're basically in an enclosed glass calling the game from really up high. It's very sterile, right? So that's interesting. When the delay happened in week 5 with the rain and the lightning, I went up top and I was in the radio booth and I took pictures. You literally could see over the stadium into the parking lot. Imagine being at the top of the third deck at Highmark Stadium. You can then see into the parking lot left or over to the restaurant, whatever, over to the right. You could do that from the radio booth. That's how high you are.
That's crazy.
So I feel really bad. And from my perspective, literally, I basically didn't talk almost the entire first half in week 5 because the signal from where our radio booth is all the way to the other sideline so far down was Sunday Night Football. There's a lot of people with a lot of signals getting jammed in there. It's like air traffic control, right? I mean, there's national broadcasts, there's cell phones. It's the only game in town. My signal just kept dropping. And then the delay happens. They kind of reset things. Other people dropped. It was so much better in the second half because you lost that interference. Yeah. But generally that doesn't happen unless you're really high up and really far away from the antenna.
Crazy.
Unbelievable. We're so excited and very happy for you that it seems like it's going to be pretty mild weather-wise. It seems
for this time of year, right?
A high of 46, relatively sunny, maybe 35 at kickoff.
Better than it's going to be in Buffalo, I think.
Pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and compared to last week, I mean, at least I won't melt my glove. So melted the glove on the heater there. But you're right. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. It has been pretty cold this week in Kansas City. I know the guys are doing the Channel 4 show out there in like 13-degree weather at night, but it is going to be a lot better. So you know what I like about that? I mean, obviously for me personally, but we don't get cheated out of a game that we're supposed to get. We're going to see Patrick Mahomes. We're going to see Josh Allen. They're going to be able to throw the ball, and we're not worried about wind or snow or rain. And let's have these two get it on and let's decide it.
I can't wait. Yeah. Well, Sal, thank you so much for your time. We know that your time's tight on the weekend, getting ready to go. Who's your bobblehead?
Bobblehead Sal.
Hey, I got to get one of those.
That's awesome.
Does he look like me?
Yeah,
I see the resemblance. You're more handsome. The real life version's got more handsome.
There you go. Bobblehead Sal. We'll just do it like this.
There you go. Guys. There you go. But we appreciate your time. I know your time's limited and you got stuff to do. So we appreciate you coming on and showing support for the show. I can't tell you how much that means to us.
Travel safe.
Yeah, no problem, guys. No problem. Thank you very much. And obviously we'll be on live on video and on radio from Kansas City, from the hotel on Monday on the Extra Point Show, 10 to 12. So people can call in, they can watch just like this, and on our Facebook page actually, and they can give a call as well. So thanks for having me, and you guys have a great night too.
All right, thanks, Sal.
Thanks, Sal. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome tonight. So much fun to have Sal on, and a great lineup altogether. So again, kudos to you for putting this together. It's awesome and a ton of fun to be able to go through. Do you feel better? Do you feel, has it helped the anxiety like it did last week?
Yeah, man. This one, my mailman. He's a dude that I talk to all week long. I walk my kids back and forth to school. Our school's real close. I'm walking and I see him all the time. And all week long, we were kind of talking. And usually as it builds up, I get more nervous as the game went on. We talked today and it was sort of the same thing we're talking about here. Like, it feels like a coin flip to me. I mean, I don't have crazy amounts of anxiety about this. I think the Bills can beat the Kansas City Chiefs. I do think that there's such a discrepancy in the defensive side of the ball. I really think the Bills are that much better of a defense that the offenses can play similar. And as long as the Bills play the defense that they are and who they should be, I think that's enough to tilt the scales. Kent coming on and telling kind of pumping the brakes on these other weapons, these McCole Hardmans and Pringles, and like, hey, if they beat you, wow, we're going to be really excited because that's not who they are. I think that type of conversation gives me a little less anxiety about this game, and that he seems to feel a little more on edge than we did about this game, and that like we have to turn it on. We got to get this ship right. And maybe it doesn't get turned on at all, where we feel like, hey, we've already turned it on and the faucet's running. And if we can bring that into this game, then there's no stopping us. So it just feels like the teams are, they are peaking at the same time, but one is just peaking with much more velocity.
No, yeah, you're spot on. And that's exactly where my head is at. I know the Bills can win.
Right.
I think the Bills are going to win. Anyone who has convinced themselves that it's a lock and that it's an absolute in either direction, right. Any Chiefs fan or any Bills fan, no, there's no chance. We got this lockdown. We're going to blow them out. These are the two best teams in football. I will be disappointed if the Bills lose. It will. I don't know, I won't say failure, but it will not meet my expectations if the Bills get one playoff win and then get knocked out. If the Bills lose to the Chiefs, I can't lose my mind. I can't flip out oh my gosh, what is wrong with them? Yeah, this is what happens in the playoffs.
Success isn't linear.
Yeah, it's how this happens. So I think that's where everybody should go into this. You should have a healthy amount of confidence. Yeah. You should feel good about this team. You should know that you are going in rooting for the team no one wants to play. No one in the NFL wants to play the Bills. Everybody wants them to get knocked out. Yeah. No one wants to play this team, including the Chiefs. They're not excited about this matchup either, but they still got to come through. They still got to be able to perform. They still got to show those capabilities. And I don't need it to be historic, unprecedented performance like we saw Saturday night. I won't be mad if it is. I won't be mad. But I don't need it to be historic, unprecedented performance that we've never seen before, but I need them to play well. I need them to look good. If they go out there and look good and go shot for shot with Kansas City and that last drive doesn't go our way, I'll walk away and I'll want to know what? Hat tip to you. I respect it. Don't give them the game. Don't make a mistake we got to live with all off season. Go out there, put your best foot forward, earn this W, or be right there because you took every single shot to take them down, and I can live with that win, lose, or draw. Just put yourself in that spot where we know they can earn it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it's not going to be the perfect game blowout that we don't think it will be, what I really want is that this game lives up to the hype. Right. Like I don't watch a lot of the national stuff, but I've been paying more attention here this week. And no matter what the conversation is that people are talking about, Kyle Brandt on Good Morning Football this morning, like they were talking about some segment. He goes, my eyes just keep coming back to Kansas City Buffalo. Like no matter what I do, my eyes just keep coming back to Kansas City Buffalo. It's the premier game of the weekend. And Brandt brought up another great point, like wild card weekend, kind of meh. There's some crappy games mixed in wild card weekend, some teams that probably don't belong in the playoffs. You have some good games, but it's not the best. Divisional round is the best round of the playoffs. Like a lot of the championship games end up being blowouts. Yeah. Like
even if one of them is half of your games are a blowout, no fun. Here we're going to get 4 really good games.
Yes, and you got some of the best heads, and the way they match up is great. And out of that, the Bills Chiefs is the best. So I really want this game, even though it's probably not going to be good for my heart or my anxiety. I do want this game to live up to what it's been billed as this whole week, which is a real true heavyweight championship match.
Absolutely. So we're going to be there for you this entire time. First, check out our guys at the Air Raid Hour. They're going to be going live just before the Tampa Bay Rams game. They're going to be going live around 1:30. Going to get some awesome preview time in there with the Air Raid preview show. We're then going to be jumping on immediately after this game there for you, hopefully ready to talk about an amazing Buffalo Bills victory. But we're going to be there for you either way, ready to go immediately with Aaron and I, plus our man Anthony Prohaska is going to be jumping on. We're going to be going through, and then we're going to be right there afterwards. Make sure you're checking out our full lineup, Cover One Roundup, the Air Raid Hour, the Hoof, Disguise Coverage, Cover One Preview, and the amazing film shows that have been going on. Make sure you check out the Film Room with Eric Turner and Anthony Prohaska. So much good content out there. Aaron, where can the people find you for these 48 hours leading up to kickoff?
Yeah, you can find me in a lot of Twitter mentions by using my name there. It's at Aaron Quinn 716, and in the Slack channel, over at the Cover One Slack channel. And then, like Greg said, you'll find me here, win or lose. You'll find me here in the post game channel, either hyping you up for the next round or talking you through it. So come join us and make sure you're here with us.
Absolutely. Come and find me at Greg Tompsett. Having fun all the time. Looking forward to it. Going to have a great weekend no matter what. But on behalf of Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to the Cover One Divisional Round Playoff Extravaganza, and we are out.